to order here, July 16th, 2018. Let's see, we will have a flag salute followed by the inspiration by Councilmember Tom Figg. So everybody rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, please. I have a bit of a story I'd like to share with you, so bear with me. As individuals, we draw inspiration from different sources. I derive my inspiration from my family, the community, and my profession, and the occasional golf shot that actually produces positive results. Life's challenge comes in balancing competing interests. For me, family is foremost. The time together, the accomplishments achieved, the celebrations we share, and the love that endures. My niece, Samantha, born to a drug addict, adopted by my sister and her husband, afflicted with an assortment of medical conditions, and tormented by unimaginable personal trauma. Samantha and her parents never gave up. She pursued her passions. She was crowned Miss Golden State earlier this year and competed 2 weeks ago for the title of Junior Miss International in San Antonio, Texas. We were there. We cheered her on. Samantha didn't win, but she remains #1 in our hearts. When consoled on falling short of her goal, her response was simply, "It just wasn't my time." No excuses, no regrets, it just wasn't my time. Rest assured, her time will come. As a family, we'll give her all the love and support she needs to succeed, whenever and whatever her goals might be. So where am I going with this? 4 years ago, I embarked on my own adventure, becoming a member of this very body, the Port Hueneme City Council. I've had my shares of highs and lows, celebrated a few victories, and endured some painful defeats. But what I gained most from this experience is remembering that family solidarity, mental health, and physical well-being are far more important than politics. Taking a page from Samantha's playbook, never look back, don't second guess. It just wasn't my time. Drawing on that wisdom, I will not pursue re-election this coming November. To repeat, I will not seek re-election. I'm hoping that this early announcement will inspire others to come forward and dedicate themselves to the betterment of our community. Meanwhile, I intend to focus on what's most important to me, playing golf with my wife and my sons. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Figg?
Here.
Councilmember Hensley?
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Here.
Mayor Schnapf?
Here, we have the agenda in front of us.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull item 7B, 7 Bravo, delinquent utility accounts. I have a couple of questions on that.
Okay, 7B. Are there any other changes?
Well, there's item, I don't remember the number, it had to do with the city attorney's impartial analysis of Measure U. I am not in favor of that matter, and I think it's best that I abstain from that item.
And so, as it is reported...
I move to, or second, the amended by
yeah,
Sharkey here.
Hold on just a second. I'm looking for that item. What number is that?
Letter E.
Letter E, 7E?
Yes.
Okay. So, Councilmember Fig would be
Abstaining.
abstaining then from, okay. Okay, and so there is a motion,
Move to approve the
right?
agenda as amended.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right, so at this point then, City Council will recess to conduct the business of the Housing Authority, and once we complete that, we'll come back to City Council meeting. So, Member Brown is joining us. Okay. Oh, no, I just said that you're joining us here on the dais, so you can go ahead and sit. Okay. All right, thank you.
Can we get that on the capital improvement program for the Housing Authority?
So, as we then move into the Housing Authority special meeting, can we have the roll call, please?
Member Fig?
Here.
Member Brown?
Here.
Member Hensley?
Here.
Member Sharkey?
Present.
Vice Chair Burke?
Here.
Chair Schnapp?
Here, we have the agenda review under HA2.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
Oh,
all
go ahead.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right, so motion carries unanimously. We then have open forum for Housing Authority, and this is where we have anyone who wishes to speak to the board on any matter not on the Housing Authority agenda. You may do so at this time, and you have 3 minutes each. So no one's coming up to the podium, so my understanding then is no one wants to speak on open forum for that portion of the agenda. We move on to HA4 new business, and this is HA4A authorization to award contract to MTM, and that is Mr. Villafana.
Good evening, Board. Tonight, I'm assisting the Housing Authority, and what we have here tonight is we're requesting authorization to award a contract to MTM Construction for the repair of multiple concrete balconies and wall repairs at the Mar Vista Senior Apartments. Recommendation is that the Housing Authority authorize the Public Works Director to award a contract to MTM for the repair of the damaged concrete balconies and walls. Background and analysis. The existing building is constructed of reinforced concrete. There are 21 balconies that have multiple structural cracks and steel railing that is corroding. There are also 17 other areas that have structural cracking that need to be repaired. Public Works staff, along with the structural engineering consultant, Avila Structural Engineering Incorporated, assessed the damage. The consultant then designed a repair. The city took advantage of the National Joint Powers Authority, NJPA, which competitively bid construction tasks with preset unit prices and specifications for general construction services, including materials, equipment, and labor costs. California Government Code 6500 authorizes public agencies to participate in cooperative purchasing agreements like those established by NJPA, while still remaining within the city's adopted rules and procedures for purchasing. A job walk was held, and MTM Construction submitted a proposal in the amount of $266,120.04. Staff has reviewed the proposal and recommends award and an additional encumbrance of $13,300 for a 5% contingency. The action, if taken, will expend $279,420, which the Housing Authority has authorized to be paid from the Capital Grant Fund and non-HUD funds. Are there any questions?
Okay. Thank you for the report. Are there any questions for staff on this?
I'm assuming, thank you,
Councilmember
Madam
Hensley?
Mayor. I'm assuming that this contract is, the guy gives a guarantee that the balcony is not going to fall off with a crowd of people up there that's drinking and go down 5 floors.
That is correct. Well, we had a structural engineering company, Avila Structural Engineers Incorporated, take a look at it. I assessed it with him. He came up with a design that will provide structural rehabilitation for the balconies and the other cracks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Mr. Brown, did you have a question?
Only question I was gonna ask is, I know on my balcony there's a big old chunk missing and a little pipe the little railing, and it goes down, the pipe is like corroded, you know, that was what was into the cement, and so the chunk is about this big.
One like this?
Yeah, that's it.
I pulled this off.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying, that they need to repair them, because I can see where if they get any looser or they crack anymore, somebody could get hurt, so. But I didn't think it was gonna cost that much.
It's very labor intensive. You have to remove the damaged portions of the concrete, and then you have to prep the surface. There's cracks there that have to be epoxy injected. Then you have to do the repair itself. And logistics is the issue here. You've got confined areas, you have to use scissor lifts and scaffolding. So that's what makes the cost so expensive, is because of the logistics and the labor intensity of the work.
Are there any other questions? So,
Move to approve.
I have a couple of questions. Thank
Forgive
you.
me.
I just wait for everyone else and then I can ask. So,
You're nice and courteous.
so the project start date and end date, do you have some timeframes?
Well, after the council awards, tomorrow I'll contact the contractor and ask for a tentative schedule.
What's your best guess?
Unfortunately, it's probably going to be sometime in September, the finish, just because of the logistics and the labor intensity of the project.
So we're talking about 38 balconies?
Well,
Give or take a few.
21 balconies, and there's about 17 other areas that have structural cracks in them that have to be cleaned, epoxy injected, and then repaired. So
Okay.
I'll have a better idea after I talk to the contractor, and then I can forward a schedule to Mr. Butler, and he can disseminate it to the council, and we'll have a better idea, probably in a week or so.
Of those balconies you're going to be working on, what's the percentage out of all of them?
I don't have that information. I can get that information for you.
Just to know if it's like 40%, 30, or over 50%, yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I will get that information.
okay. Mr. Brown, yeah, you have,
I
yeah,
kind
go
of read
ahead.
a little bit on it, I believe it to be about 30% or a
About
little over
30%.
30%
Okay,
of what I saw.
yeah, okay.
Okay, doesn't mean I'm right.
No problem. Okay, very good. Any further questions then? All right, so you had a motion then?
Motion to approve.
Sirs? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right, so motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Villafana. And now we have HA5 item, which are board comments. So from this board for Housing Authority, any comments? No comments? Okay. Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, for Mr. Butler, if I may, I'm really concerned. To me, it's almost like senior abuse. Where are we getting along to get those thermal pane windows in and the glass windows and all that other stuff?
Yes, so you'll recall at the meeting on July 2nd, the Housing Authority Board approved the use of non-federal funds, so it's basically leftover redevelopment money that was dedicated to the Housing Authority. So we have the green light now to move forward on that. Gabby presented a timeline at that meeting that, of course, starts off with a competitive bid process. So that process will be going on, throughout the summer months, with the goal of trying to get this project done as soon as possible, because we know that's the desire of the residents and the Housing Authority Board.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Butler. I appreciate that. The timeline that I heard the last meeting, I think, was somewhere in 2019. Is that true? I mean,
Yeah, it could be the spring of 2019 before the project is actually completed.
what about 2021? I
No,
mean,
no, it won't be that long.
I'm serious. We're
fortunately.
into the situation so far, and this is deplorable. These people know they're older people, they live there, they've suffered, and I don't know why we can't expedite something. If we get the balconies in October, if we can get the proposal out and get it back by, say, September, then we could start in November perhaps, because we have warmer winters here now. Maybe we can get some of those done before the winter issues. And I really seriously urge the staff to get working on this and expedite it as soon as possible. I don't want to go in and see the people freezing anymore. Thank you so much, sir.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so with that then, it looks like the agenda doesn't note it, but at this point, we actually end the Housing Authority, right? And move on to reconvening then the City Council meeting. Is that correct? Okay, so we just need to make sure that's clear definition for next time. There should be an item here, just so that everybody else could follow along too. So we are now at City Council, item number 5, open forum. We'll reserve 30 minutes at this point in the meeting to hear matters from the public on items not on the agenda. I do have a couple of speaker cards, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. So the first speaker I have is Becky Bruning, and Becky will be followed by Lucy Cartagena.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. I am here tonight on behalf of the Port Hueneme Historical Society Museum to let you know about upcoming events. We have a guest speaker that will be there on this coming Saturday, the 21st. Her name is Joy Todd, and she will be talking about the Impossible Women of Pleasant Valley. And then on August 4th, we have Eileen Tracy, who will be talking about the history of the Saviors family. On August the 11th, we have Richard Sennett, who will address the topic Films Made in the Hueneme Area. Also coming up this Saturday will be the first Lighthouse Tour, where anyone who wants to go can sign up at the museum, meet at the museum, and they will provide transportation to and from the lighthouse from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., and it is free. And then on the third Friday of every month, they have a tour of the harbor, which you also need to sign up with at the museum, and they request that you watch a 30-minute video on the history of Port Hueneme. Any questions?
Okay, any questions for Becky? All right,
Okay.
thank you so much. So we have Lucy Cartagena followed by Bob Tatum.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Lucy Cartagena. I am not a Hueneme resident. I'm sorry. My love is here, though. I used to live here. I'll be back soon. I'm here speaking on homeless issues. I currently sit on the City of Oxnard Homeless Commission. I am the vice chair, and we work a lot on the homeless issues in the City of Oxnard, but we also work collaboratively with the County of Ventura and the Continuum of Care. The only city we see that doesn't have any kind of homeless CAG Citizens Advisory Committee is the City of Port Hueneme. So I'm here to ask that you guys consider making a resolution of adopting a committee that works just on homeless issues. I know we just had recently the Perkins Road that backed up to your beach. So we want to make sure that no city has to be so impacted with homeless issues. And I don't really know how it is affecting your community, but we want to make sure that we work collaboratively and no city is a dumping site. So that's why I'm here. City of Port Hueneme is dear and near to the whole County of Ventura. Our beaches are important and our citizens are important, and we want to be good neighbors, and we want to make sure that we all work on the same issue that is affecting and inflicting every city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Bob Tatum, followed by Steve Kinney.
Mayor, City Council members, I'm Bob Tatum, Freedom First, Skunk Masters, whatever you want to call it. This is a non-cannabis subject, so I had the opportunity to go into Miranda Park for the first time. Gorgeous, great tennis courts, great opportunity there for the city as a draw. But what struck me was it closes at 4:30, and it's surrounded by houses. So I lived in a lot of condominium complexes in my life, and we had tennis courts and we had a swimming pool, and it was ours. And it really wasn't for anybody else to come and see. I think you might want to consider looking at the hours on Miranda Park. Those tennis courts, they could be utilized. It stays light much longer than 4:30. Even during the school year, you want to encourage kids to go out there and play tennis. And it's a great place. And it shouldn't be shut off at 4:30. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And then we have Steve Kenny. Steve.
Evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Steve Kenny, a Port Hueneme resident, and I'm the president of the board of REACH, Recreation, Education, Arts, and Culture in Hueneme. And I'm sure that Rich Rollins, who's the vice president of the board, seconds everything I'm about to tell you. I'm speaking to you, I'm really speaking to all of you and the residents of the community and businesses of the community here to urge you to participate in the major fundraising initiative of the year for REACH, which is the Bricks at the Beach, if you will, campaign. I think everybody understands what buy a brick means, and REACH has arranged for a display site right next to the entry to the pier at the beach for an installation later on in the fall. We just need everybody to act on what I'm sure is your best intentions to buy a brick. By August 3rd, that will be the deadline for it. So this is the last council meeting before that deadline. So I feel like I'm auditioning for an announcer job on a public radio station to do the closer on the week's fund drive. Because I know you all have been just intending to fill out that form or go online and buy that brick, as Mr. Green, I know for a fact already has, for example. But you know, we just need to take that final step. And I urge you, and again, when I say you, I mean all the residents of the community, to commemorate loved ones, to celebrate their family, to commemorate a pet, businesses, to give some publicity to your own civic responsiveness. You know, there are all kinds of reasons to buy a brick. Again, I urge you to act on that great impulse that's welling up within all of you.
And you have different pricing, right, for the bricks?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, Mayor, I'm glad you pointed that out. Yes, there are Michelle, help me out here. There are 4x8 bricks for $100. There are 8x8 bricks for $200. There are corporate bricks for $500. Corporate bricks with logos. I mean, it goes on and on. The REACH website is www.reachhueneme, only one H in there, .org, and it's all laid out there in front of you. I've got 1 second left, so please go to the website and again, act on, you know, bring your better nature forward. And support REACH. Thank you.
Yes, and then you also have a date, right, for a special event where you unveil the bricks?
We do, Mayor. I apologize for taking so long, but I'm just
No, go
responding
ahead.
to your questions. I think it's October 27th, a Saturday, at the last Saturday in October, where we're intending to have an event at the pier where we'll have an unveiling and a nice little function there. And seriously, one of the things that we'll include in that is a recognition of the Ventura County Community Foundation, which has donated $20,000 to support this campaign. So they've recognized the value of it to the community, and again, we hope everyone else steps up as well.
Wonderful. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, Mr. Kinney, I'm glad you're here. Because I don't know if you checked this out, but and I haven't tried this on my home computer, but I did try to go to the page on off of my phone.
Uh-oh.
And when you go to the pay site, it sends you to a kind of an odd page, which I didn't know if it was a legitimate page or if I was being misdirected somehow, but I didn't feel like entering my credit card information without a little more surety on that. So I don't know if you've checked this across platforms or if it was just a singularity or something that was happening there, but you might want to check what happens when you click on the pay button there.
Any comment?
I'm sure that Mr. Kinney would accept your check in person. And I know that because he accepted mine in person. And I do want to take note for all of the community that this was a historic occasion because Mr. Kinney actually apologized for talking too much. Never happened before.
But I'm not. So can I speak?
Yes, yes.
So
yes.
have you had a
Councilmember Fig?
discussion with Pink Floyd and see if they could do another iteration of another brick in the sand? And maybe we could get a little bit more participation. Don't answer.
Is that a
This will
song?
teach me to step forward in public comment. That's all I know.
You can get grilled here too.
Exactly.
Any other questions from anyone
I hope
else?
the item later tonight doesn't go like this.
All right.
Did I answer all your questions? Actually,
Yes,
I will
there-
check on that, John. Good for us to.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Mr. Kinney,
Yes, sir.
for those who want to do it the old-fashioned way, is it possible to just drop by City Hall and get an application, fill it out right there, write a check?
You mean paper and pencil?
That's-
Yes, we can accommodate that as well.
Are there
We
any
have-
other locations in town where I might be able to find some of the applications?
Rich has some back
Rich-
here.
Rich is holding him up. By the way, I should also note that the city clerk, who's much too shy to announce this herself, just tried it on her phone, and it is mobile friendly, and your credit card number is safe. That's not a warranty on my
Good to
part.
know. Good to know. Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council on matters not on the agenda? All right, we will have some time at the end of the agenda if anybody wants to step up at that point. So now we move on to item number 6, public hearing. And so we have one item, 6A under that. So I will verify posting of notice by city clerk, and she's nodding her head yes. Council members declare any conflict at this point? Seeing none, council members declare any ex parte contacts? Seeing none. So I will then officially open the public hearing for this item, and we'll have the staff presentation, and we'll move on accordingly. So who will make this presentation? Mr. City Manager?
This will be Police Chief Andrew Salinas.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Chief.
Madam Mayor, City Council, City staff, there's a staff report before you on this city ordinance. In summary, the DUI cost recovery ordinance allows police departments through the government code to recover costs for DUI related incidents involving traffic collisions, or if a witness calls in a DUI, meaning they're following a drunk driver and are calling for immediate police assistance to stop the drunk driver, that also counts towards cost recovery for these types of incidents. Again, the government code allows for this type of recovery, and on average, we process approximately 12 to 15 events a year related to DUI traffic-related incidents. And if you do the math, on average, they each recover about $1,000, so the city would be recovering anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 a year by implementing this ordinance. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Are there any questions for the chief? Councilmember
Capital
Hensley?
idea, but was there something else too about the state sharing part of the DUI revenue with this? Somewhere? No.
No, not that I'm aware of. We don't, nobody shares their recovery expenses with us, and nor do we share, meaning it doesn't go into a giant pool and then it gets redistributed out to the cities. So whatever
So we do get a small share.
No, we get whatever we ask for and recover based on the number of minutes we are on that specific call. So
No, I mean as far as the fine themselves, as far as the drunk driver.
Okay, drunk driving fines, yes.
Yes.
We do also recover a small part of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for the chief? Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yes, Chief. I'm looking at the upper limit here is $12,000.
Yes, the government code puts a limit and cap on that, meaning that the police department can't charge someone more than $12,000 per incident.
So this is collected through the courts, or?
No, the police department will actually send the suspect or the person in question a bill from the police department, and they'll be required to pay that.
Now, if they can't pay, does that result in suspension of license registration? Or
it goes to a collection agency.
Goes to a collection agency?
Yes.
Although it sometimes can be added as a condition of you know, the
Like restitution.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just, you know, we've seen a lot of stories lately about people with like huge fines, and then they lose their license and they can't get a job because they don't have a license, and they can't pay the bill because they don't have a job, and you get into a circle. So this is a collection agency type thing.
Well, no, first, the police department will send an invoice and
Right.
attempt to collect, and if we cannot collect, we will go to the court to see if we can obtain restitution through their probation terms, and if that doesn't work, then we would use a collection agency to help recover costs.
Okay, so that's kind of what we do with like parking tickets and.
Yes, sir.
All right, great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
I think it's a good idea.
So is that all right, so with finishing up the staff presentation, is there any testimony from the public? Anybody wishing to speak on this matter? All right, so then I will close the public testimony and consider any further discussion or possible action.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council approve and adopt the ordinance to be read by title only, introduced for first reading to be read by title only.
I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So motion carries unanimously. And Mr. City Attorney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The title of the ordinance, and for those of you who have not heard previous explanations, the state law requires that either the entire ordinance that any city is adopting be read, which can be pages sometimes, or that the title only can be read if the council moves to approve that. So the title of this ordinance is an ordinance enacting recovery of emergency service costs against persons operating a motor vehicle while under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or any combination thereof, for making a false police report or intentional wrongful conduct resulting in an appropriate emergency response.
Okay, thank you. So now we are on to consent agenda item number 7, and I know that we have 2 items there to be noted. 7B will be pulled and discussed individually, and then Councilmember Fig is abstaining from 7E. So with the remaining items on the consent agenda, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, so motion carries unanimously. Then we move on to 7B. So we're going to be discussing the delinquent utility accounts. Would that be you, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We had advance warning that at least 2 or 3 members of the council were going to want to pull this off consent and talk about it. So I've asked Finance Director Ken McDonald to come forward to be prepared to answer any questions. I think Charlie Green, City Attorney, will also jump in at some point because some of this has to do with statute of limitations issues. First of all, we start by saying that this is not the way we want to operate in the future. We got into a situation where some of these bills go back, I think, to 2008, 2009, that period. the good news for Ken and I tonight is we can't be, I guess we can be shot as messengers, but we can't be blamed for going back that far because neither one of us has been around that long. But a lot of these bills go back to, I don't know how to explain it really, other than apparently the enforcement and collection slipped through the cracks during those earlier years. We're going to have Ken talk a little bit about the game plan going forward, because I think the question for the council, which is a fair one, is how do we keep this from happening in the future, where we're having to write off such a large amount of bills that are, or funds that would be due to the city. The mayor did ask about the funds that are involved in this. It would not be a general fund impact. This would be a write-off that would be absorbed by the applicable enterprise fund. So either water, sewer, which we also call wastewater, and or solid waste and recycling fees. So it kind of depends on the type of fee that's being written off, but it would not be an impact to our general fund. But with that, I'm going to ask Ken to talk a little bit about, at least again with his 8 or 9 months of being here, why we're bringing this forward now. It's kind of a cleanup item, and then the city attorney may want to weigh in on the issue of statute of limitations and how that applies here.
Okay.
Yeah, namely, this is utility balances from 2008 through 2014, so it's, I think, 7 complete fiscal years. These have been carried on the financial statements as an accounts receivable, but at this time they're so old, it's not likely they'll be collectible. We've kind of discussed addressing some of this to try and limit it from the future, but the reality is because you charge these after the service is rendered, you don't pay in advance. The only way to guarantee that you won't have any lost revenue is to cover it with a deposit. The problem being is because we do 2-month billing, somebody say starts on day 1, they get a bill 2 months later, they don't pay it, they won't get shut off until that second 2-month period comes in. So they could have as much as 4 months to as little as maybe 2 months of usage in there. Our current deposit is $100 or $125 depending on what services they get, but that $125 covers a minimum of, I think it's $220 for 2 months of service. So what you end up having is that deposit can cover about 25% of their potential debt to that party. The only way to really address that is to increase the deposits so that you always hold more than what that person leaving us would end up owing. But then you would have deposits of, say, $400 that you would have to be paying. Another way to try and address this, I've been in discussions with people about this, is to change from a 2-month billing to a 1-month billing. The real problem with that is the lines that we have when, say, the bills are due on the 20th of the month would be doubled from what they are now by going to a monthly service. We're trying to redesign or re-accommodate the lobby so it will be ADA compatible, and then put in a second cashier window so we can handle more of that volume there. But we'll really have to probably get into a system where there's different billing cycles. Right now, we have 2 cycles that happen every month, but they're 2-month cycles. What you typically do in larger agencies is you'll have, say, 4 or 5 cycles where every cycle would be having their due date during the week. And so that way it kind of spreads out through the month, the amount of time that's in there. The current system we have would not be very conducive to setting up multiple cycles and multiple billing, but I think something after we're going to generate an RFP to get at least get quotes and services from new software providers, utility billing software, and then it would probably be more applicable and a little easier to accommodate setting up monthly and then multiple cycles. But that's probably going to be at least 12 months out from today.
Okay, so are there any questions for staff? Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
I realize these are very historical, so consequently we're SOL, we're not going to collect unless somebody's really and you weren't here when John Lang Holmes was in the area. I'm just wondering how the system allowed some of the bigger corporations, I understand the smaller people. The second question is, and that's rhetorical, the second question is, what are we doing now? We're not facing the same thing in the last 2 years, are we, or 3 years?
I haven't looked at it to see if it's the same rough percentage, but I would guess that our uncollectible accounts are relatively consistent. They're not going to be like peaks and valleys, real high one year, real low the other. And mainly because we don't, I think the amount of rentals and the amount of people moving in and moving out is pretty consistent. You're going to have those numbers change drastically if you have a real highly mobile community that you're providing services to. Now, we do have a little bit of that from maybe people that are at the military base and things like that. But they would kind of be blended in with any other customer that we would have.
Now, I understand that possibly some neighborhoods have, or communities have made sure that the landlord is involved with it too. Has that been a consideration? I think they did it over at John Lennon Estates, Beach Community Service District.
You know, I haven't gotten that in depth into that, but in other places I've been at, we had a high incidence of people leaving their home for 3, 4, 5 months at a time. And we had a case when I was there, and this was probably 15 years ago, where somebody moved into the person's house when they were down in Mexico for a few months and actually started up service, came home early, and called us before they had actually got to their home and said, oh, we wanted to get service up. We told them, well, the service is already on and the person's name that it was on under. So the guy found out that somebody that knew him had squatted in his house. So what we had done is we had set up where we would not turn on service and allow service without having some proof of who the property owner landlord was. It makes it a little bit more cumbersome on our part in order to get somebody's service activated and turned on, but you do end up saving your property owners and your landlords from that type of situation happening. So that would be my recommendation if we didn't have that in the long term, going to something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, this is something we've done periodically from time to time. This is a little longer range than usual. If we're going back to 2008, I mean, that probably explains the Lang Holmes. Lang Holmes is out of business. And I assume these 5 properties were something they built on spec. I don't know why there'd be a bill there. They did have a successor company take over that project. Somebody bought that property eventually. I guess we're in a question here on titling or whatever, escrow. Wouldn't that kind of a bill be part of like an escrow process or something that there's an outstanding utility bill on the property?
You would think so, but in some of the other cities I've been at, we've even contacted the escrow company to let them know there was a balance. If you can get that escrow officer involved and let them know that there is some bills due, and they can actually put it into the escrow, but it's not something that happens just automatically.
The answer for that is that they consider those kinds of bills to be personal obligations as opposed to property obligations, and therefore they're not due through escrow. The escrow company could actually incur liability for trying to collect them.
Okay. Yeah, I know we have, Mr. Hensley's comments, we have, a while ago we did, and I don't remember the details, but we did do something very similar with the actual property owners and their responsibility for their tenants and things like that. We did try to, because the owner stays there, the tenant moves. Yeah. And we did look at that. So that's in somewhere back there in our ordinances. And finally, on page 45, the last one, I see a $7,200 bill from Macro Z Technology for a zero hydrant meter. That's I assume a commercial meter that they had to get a $7,000 bill, and I just don't recognize the company name, and that doesn't mean I didn't forget it, but I don't know who that would be that would have a $7,000 meter.
Probably a construction company, and like the residential accounts, the deposit isn't quite adequate to cover that. They probably were filling up multiple water trucks. We got the meter turned in, sent them a bill, and then they just disappeared. Packed
Okay.
up shop and leave the state.
All right, it just really stood out, and I was just curious because I did not recognize the name of the company. So, thanks.
Did you have any questions? And Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Thank you very much. Clearly, I think something has to be done about this. We got to figure something out. Looking at these numbers, there were 20 pages. And the way I saw it, we're looking at just short of $400,000. 242 of those accounts were under $100. I can see where the smallest one was 10 cents. So there's quite a few that were really quite small. There was a small number, though, that were really quite large. 17 were over $1,000, and the highest one was $27,000. And we can't track them down. There was one at $19,000, another at $18,000, another at $14,000. I would like to find a way to track these people down. There were 2 HOAs. They haven't gone away, I don't think. We could check, but and of course we saw the John Lang home references as well. There were 17 from $1,000 to $27,000. 1,700 though were between $100 and $500. The bulk, the majority. And anywhere, they're in three-figured numbers, and we got to figure out something, or else does the word get out that people can leave town and not pay their bill? And, like I said, there's 2 HOAs involved in this too.
Yeah, and like I said, the best way is to get adequate deposits, so none of these exist. But then both the finance department and you as the end responsible party and the council will get static, hey, we had to pay a $10,000 deposit for this account. Well, if the average bill is $5,000 every 2 months, $10,000 is the only way to guarantee that we'll get it all back.
And I don't know if that's the answer, but I think our attorney's going to have to be challenged on this one to figure out some solutions for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of agencies I've been at where they take the average bill.
How'd it get to be mine?
And they'll basically say 2.5 times the average bill, and it'll be different by property. So this property over here is a 3,000 square foot home, and this one's a 1,200 square foot home. If the past users, give you some kind of indication of what the bill would be for that, then that's the 100% method that will work.
Yeah,
but it's not quite
obviously
palatable.
the majority, we're pretty good sized bills, but when it's a 2-month cycle, I understand it getting upwards of $300, $400, $500 pretty quickly. But again, when we allow people to get into the tens of thousands, I think we got to have some kind of an alarm system. Anyway.
I do not know how old all of these accounts are. I've been told they're quite old, and therefore with respect to these accounts and not going forward, which I think is your point, I don't know what can be done about them. Typically, any business, and this is a business, which operates on, this is what's called an open book account. You use something on a monthly basis and they bill you and you pay for it. And the typical statute of limitations on an open book account is 2 years. If and I think that, hopefully this is going to require some personnel, I think, to do this, but eventually the finance department could get to a point where there is a dollar amount that triggers their attention after 2 months, and then if something doesn't happen immediately, then there can be a sequence of events. One of the things that can happen, and I've seen this happen, is cities can go to small claims court. You have a person that's a designated small claims person. They walk in with a list of accounts. You get judgments, and now the problem with that is judgments are not automatically paid. You have to collect the judgment. But once you have a judgment, you could turn it over to a collection agency and let them go, you know, bang on these people. But,
As regards the age of these are all 6 years old.
okay.
2008 to 2014. So we know that they're only 6 years old.
Yeah.
The most newest is going to be 3.5 years.
Exactly.
The
And
oldest
then
10.
from 14 to
Add on
18,
to
we've
that.
waited 4 years longer to be able to compile this list.
Right.
So it's an interesting subject.
Yeah, I've had some other agencies where we've contracted with collection agencies to go through the process, and then literally 1 month or 2 months after they're delinquent and that balance is in, that you turn that over to a collection agency and they aggressively go after collecting it. The problem is that the lowest I've ever seen is 30% to about 55% of that bill gets picked up by the collection agency. Now, all these bills, although they are written off, if any of these individuals come back to the city for service, we can deny them service even if the bill is 50 years old. We can't collect on them in court, but we can deny them service for it. And I had this researched when I worked at a small town that did all these services plus electricity. That was the real hammer, because nobody can operate in the Central Valley with 100-degree weather without electricity.
But it's not going to be a big collection factor in a situation like
No,
this.
you get 1 out of 100 if you're lucky.
And I think in terms of using a collection agency like that, what you can do before judgment is you have to balance what the likelihood of maybe going through an automated letter process, if we had the software to do that, where you send out an automatic letter, then another one that's a little less polite, and then if nothing happens, then you can assume on a reasonable basis they're not going to pay, and then you could give it to a collection agency, because better that you get 50 or 60 or 70% than zero.
Yep.
Especially when it's almost $400,000 to start with. 50% of that, I'll take that.
Yeah, and this has come off of the recommendation of the auditors, because they've been carrying this balance on the receivables, and it's clearly from an auditor perspective, it's not collectible.
Okay, so I did have a couple of questions. So that these write-offs will occur in each of the enterprise accounts, so it could be water, wastewater, or
And it will be their
sewer
exact
trash.
balance.
Pardon?
It will be their exact balance, because the system tracks it. So like, say, the 19,000 one, it could be all water and wastewater, or it could be, you know, all garbage, solid waste. Whatever their balance is, it goes to that specific fund.
Okay, so I just want to point out a couple of them. I know it seems like a few of them could have been write-offs because there was a negotiation made on the balances. So I would propose that in the future, if there's any negotiation made on like higher balances where we can collect on part of it, that the write-off occurs at that point
That's what
versus
should happen.
waiting. You know, waiting
Otherwise,
like
you may
years.
go try and collect on something you've already agreed, and then you're getting into
Exactly, so I
serious
believe
problems.
there's at least 3 of them in here with that story. And then the larger, there's 3 of them I want to point out. Country Inn of Port Hueneme. So this was a hotel that preceded the Holiday Inn. So somehow, you know, this business has been in business for a long time in the community. But how we could not collect like just shy of $4,000 from a hotel that's always been in business is
I'll
kind of
tell you how.
surprising to me.
Let's say, just for simplicity's sake, that Holiday Inn took over on January 1st, 2013. When they take over, they will not, nor can they be liably held for any utilities prior to that date. So when the old company basically closed their account on December 31st, we sent them a bill. They basically are no longer operating that hotel, and they just don't pay it. Same thing with the homes and all that. They're paying and they pay regular on, and then you get to the end, there's nothing to disconnect, so nothing to do. You just have to go after them.
So there's a couple others like that. HDD Company, a meter of $55.73. I'm going to read them out loud. Whitaker Construction, $27,380. I mean, how do we collect on these construction companies that come into town and do something, whether it's for us or for another business, and then hop on out? What?
Well, at that amount, we're now can actually go into court because you can justify the cost. The problem is that these numbers are so low that you can't justify spending legal time or even staff time really trying to collect them, and that's why you turn them over in bulk to a collection agency that's set up as a mill to call people and try and collect money. But, you know, when you get somebody up to a $27,000 bill, then things start to get a little different.
And then there's one Naval Research Lab of $46.75. You know, I question that. Is that a business on the base that we couldn't collect from? Because I know we supply water to the base, but they're like one solid account, not necessarily individually. So that one seems really odd to me.
Yeah, and just because naval's in the name doesn't necessarily mean it's the U.S. government.
I see. Okay.
So it could be either of those.
Yeah, they could be in the orange business.
Pardon?
You know,
that could be what?
They could be in the orange business.
You know what? Since I've been here, when I've been involved in any of these types of accounts making adjustments, usually the leeway that we had would be somebody has some reason for why their payment got late, or their payment got posted to the wrong account. Once we correct it, we reverse out the interest and the penalties and those things. If there's any kind of adjustment to the actual water bill, say they had a leak and they couldn't have used that much water and there was some kind of mistake or the meter broke. Now, in the past, I can't really speak to any of those, but if that kind of situation happens now, my approach is to go in and make those adjustments, because you've either overstated your revenue, but the only way to correct that is to have the system reverse that revenue so that it doesn't leave that balance out there for the same reason that you have. So when you go back at somebody years later, in the 9 months I've been here, I've had one that was a property owner that I think it was the, what's the bar over there on Pleasant Valley that, Top Deck.
Top Deck.
Somebody that owned it before the current owner, they had moved out, they thought they had forwarded the mail and they just didn't get it. So I think it was 2 or 3 years later, we had still sent them out notices and they got one and disputed it. We had to go back and show, hey, this is what the time was, this is the date, and then gotten it all straightened out. And in that case, the current owner had like 4 or 5 days that we didn't have the correct cutoff, so we made the prior owner produce the settlement statement from the escrow to show when it actually closed. When we had that, we went to the current owner, hey, you owe this additional 5 days, and we basically got it straightened out because the past owner was conscientious and came forward and you know, reconciled it out.
Madam Mayor, those go to specifics which I think Mr. McDonald is totally capable of working out. What the council is probably looking for is a procedure to particularly address larger accounts, but even the smaller accounts, because I don't know how this breaks down, but I suspect that a large portion of this almost $400,000 consists of accounts under a couple of $100. Right. And probably a direction to staff to, you know, come up with a sensible procedure on what to do with those accounts and how long to carry them and so on might be in order, so that there's at least a procedure that can be followed in the future. Apparently there wasn't. So.
Right. So I feel that that's what's needed here, so we don't get into this bind 10 years out, because the oldest one is about 10 years old.
It'll be $1 million in.
That's, yeah. And one of the things, too, is that I have a friend who moved to a house in Ventura, renting it about a year ago. And she was faced with just that. They would take a bill and average it out, and they charged her 2.5 times what a monthly bill would be. And so she was facing a deposit of over $600 just to open service with the city of Ventura. And she freaked out about it and then asked me, well, you know, what do you do in Hueneme, right? But, you know, it's certainly serious for those who are trying to open something, but then again, we have to protect then our assets so we don't face these kind of dilemmas then down the road.
Yeah, and you can get kind of creative. I mean, the approach that you can look at for cable and telephone service, they build those services in advance and have for decades. But that's the reason why. And you can build a minimum portion in advance too. It'd be completely different than what we're doing now, but that is some approaches to do that, is rather than waiting, you build a minimum and then you just bill the additional usage when that comes in there. But
the thing you have to be careful of in those kinds of things and getting there's always going to be low-income people who really are going to have a difficulty coming up with a $600 deposit, and you either have to have a deposit that makes some sense for everybody, or you have to have some kind of exception for people of low income, which then gets into the whole problem of how do they prove their low income, and you know, it becomes sometimes a more expensive proposition than just setting a lower thing and having a collection policy. So, you know, I know we're not a big enough operation, perhaps, to go into that kind of in-depth background at this point. My suggestion is that you let staff work this up and then come back with a policy for you to look at, and maybe there's a reasonable increase in the deposit, which would help minimize the loss, but doesn't go up 2 or 3 times that would really hurt low-income people.
Yeah. So I know I have total confidence in you and your team to create something. You have some experience, you know, and different tools in your tool belt to come up with something that's creative but will minimize this impact for us. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just, you know, if we're going to focus, I think it's pretty obvious to focus on, you know, the big meters, the commercial, where the real money is, and that, you know, obviates the need to look at, you know, the low-income renter who's got a tough enough time as it is. So I don't know if there's a better process. You know, I have my theories on why this got so out of hand, but that's another story altogether.
Okay. We do have a speaker card that just came in. You want to say something right now?
One last thing.
Go ahead.
You're discussing, you know, some of the ordinances or ideas that you come up with, and I would agree that in the macro, you got to make rules and follow the law, but in the micro, you got to think about understanding and cooperation with people when they have those issues.
So I have a speaker card from Aaron Wiedemeyer.
Good evening, Mayor Schnapp and council members, and this may be a little bit out of the ordinary, but I'm here representing the Wiedemeyer Family Trust. I'm the secondary trustee on that account. We do have several properties within the city, and while we try to make right those bills, sometimes we don't pick the best renters. With the 2-month period, if they leave and time it correctly, we're unable to withhold their personal deposit to us. There was a time when the person was leaving, the owners of the property were also included in the notice that there was a balance due at that time when the services were cut off, which provides the owners the opportunity then to withhold that money from what would normally be returned to the renters before they leave. But at 2 months, they're gone. We can't find them anymore. So if that could happen again, it would really be helpful for owners in general.
Okay, all right, thank you. So are there any other questions or comments on this? Did you have anything to say, Mr. City Manager?
No, I think we hear the concerns loud and clear, and I think, you know, the focus, we definitely, if we get into a cycle again where we have development going on, that looks like a key area for us to focus on is these construction or contractors that may have a dedicated meter, you know, somehow collecting through a deposit or some other mechanism enough to make sure we don't get burned when they're done with their project, because it looks like that's really where the big money was on some of these.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything further, Mr. McDonald?
No, not until I can bring something back to you to really make the hard decision.
Okay, all right. So is there a motion then?
I move to write these debts off and get the books cleared out.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None. So motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We look forward to procedures that you may want to brief us on in the future. Thanks. So with that, then, we move out of all the consent agenda stuff, and we move on to item 8A, Public Works Director reports and comments, and so that's Mr. Villafana. We did. Yeah, so when I made the motion for the consent agenda with those two items, pulling this one and E abstaining, we then approved it all, yeah, the rest of it, yeah. Okay.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, City Council. Tonight, I'm asking authorization to award a contract to MTM Construction for the repair of the Channel Islands Bridge. It's recommended that the City Council authorize the Public Works Director to award a contract to MTM Construction for the repair of the damaged bridge on Channel Islands Boulevard, approximately 500 feet east of Victoria Avenue. The background on this bridge was struck by an impaired driver over the President's Day holiday weekend in February of this year. Public Works staff, along with a structural engineering consultant, assessed the damage and designed a repair. The city took advantage of the National Joint Powers Authority, NJPA, which competitively bid construction tasks with preset unit prices and specifications for general construction services, including materials, equipment, and labor costs. California Government Code 6500 authorizes public agencies to participate in cooperative purchasing agreements like those established by NJPA, while still remaining within the city's adopted rules and procedures for purchasing. A job walk was held with MTM Construction, and MTM submitted a proposal in the amount of $56,225.26. The staff has reviewed this proposal and recommends award and an additional encumbrance of $5,600 for a 10% contingency. The fiscal impact: the action, if taken as recommended, will expend $61,847, which City Council has authorized to be paid from the gas tax funds. Note to date, an additional $10,000 was expended on design. The City Manager's Office is working on recovering these costs through our insurance carrier and the impaired driver's insurance company. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for staff on this? Councilmember Sharkey?
I will move the recommended action.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So we have a 4-0. Mr. Hensley's off the dais right now. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Villafana.
Thank you.
We have item 9, which is our police chief, reports and comments, monthly crime update. So welcome back, Chief Salinas.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff, I'm here today to present our June crime report this evening, and I'll make the crime report portion of it very quick, short and sweet, and we'll go into several other matters that Council might be interested in. Here is our year-to-date stats all the way through the month of June. Of note, I wanted to point out that we've had obviously no homicides, very few rapes, which may not actually be actual rapes. They may be child abuse cases that are now classified as rapes, and 8 robberies throughout the entire year, which is just a little over 1 for every month. The aggravated assault categories I've explained before. Now that we include domestic violence, strangulations, and brandishings in there, that number is not indicative of stabbings and shootings that we've had in our city, which I'm only aware of, I believe, 1 or 2 thus far this year. So we're doing very good as it relates to violent crime. We're still very challenged with property crime, as you can see there, where we had a total of 38 property crimes just this past June. Moving on to, since our last update, the Port Hueneme Police Department has officially deployed naloxone, which many of you may have seen in the media. They did a piece on us, the VC Star, as well as KEYT, KVTA, came in as we are one of the few agencies in the county to fully deploy this. It is the nasal version, or the Narcan version, nasal spray for those who have overdosed on opioids. And we talked about deploying this program earlier this year, and all of our officers have been through the training. So we are fully deployed now. Here's a picture of the kits that we now carry in our vehicles. Actually, every officer now carries them. It's as an assigned piece of equipment. And hopefully we are going to be using them soon and start saving some lives. Many of you have noticed we have changed our police lobby window. That tint is no longer on there. You now just don't hear this ominous voice on the other side of the window, this mystery voice talking to you. You can now actually have face-to-face contact, and so we've since taken down the tint. We made some corrections on the other side, which allowed us to do that, so now we are more customer-friendly. And even when I arrived here back in last March, that was something I noticed and was convinced I was going to change very, very soon, and so I'm actually happy that this is now in its present condition. We now offer traffic collision reports online. If you are involved in a traffic collision in the city of Port Hueneme, rather than coming to the police department, you just wait a few days and you can go online to crashdocs.org, which is a system facilitated by Carfax. And you can actually obtain your police report by inputting your name, your report number, paying for your police report as you would here, which I believe is $22, and you can get your police report online. And this is now a service we provide to our citizens, or anyone actually involved in a traffic collision in our city for that matter. On June 30th, as part of our emergency preparedness program and in conjunction with our Listos program, our reserve officers, our police explorers, and our Ventura County Fire Department, we visited the Parkview Elementary neighborhood and visited over 200 homes, installed 109 free smoke alarms, and we did this in 36 of those homes. We either addressed homes that didn't have smoke alarms, had outdated smoke alarms, or had smoke alarms that didn't work. And so here's a picture of one of our explorers actually explaining everything to a resident. They got these door tags if they weren't home when we visited them, with a number that they could contact to still call someone to get someone to come to their residence and actually get some free smoke alarms. And then here's a picture of our reserve officers, some of our explorers, as well as our graduates from our Listos program that participated in the event. We talked about earlier in terms of my goals for this year in terms of crime mapping software, where our residents can now go online. It's now officially live, crimemapping.com, and they can figure out what crime is happening in their neighborhood. All you need to do is go to the crimemapping.com website, type in California, Port Hueneme Police, and you'll get this. Now, this is the city of Oxnard and the city of Port Hueneme. This is just kind of to show you what you would get initially. What you'll do is you'll filter out the Oxnard Police Department, and you'll get a smaller version. Now, this is for an entire month. Don't panic. This is for 30 days or 4 weeks, and even if you wanted a smaller sample of it, this is for 1 week, and we actually drew in the border here. Unfortunately, the software doesn't, because our cities are so close, the program doesn't actually delineate with a line the borders. So what you have to do is you have to make sure you just type in Port Hueneme Police Department and use that filter, and you'll get this. This is more reasonable. This is 1 week's worth of crime. Most of it are, you see 5 cases of graffiti, 2 assaults, batteries, a narcotics arrest, and 2 thefts up there in the north end. So this is a lot more reasonable. So we average about 13 reportable events a week, which is a little less than 1 a day, or a little less than 2 a day in our city, which is pretty good. So again, that's something that our residents can now go do by themselves to see what's happening in their neighborhood. And it takes about 3 to 4 days to get that information uploaded, because by the time it merges, by the time the supervisor approves the report, it gets merged with our computer systems and uploaded. It takes about 3 to 4 days. Many of you may have heard of all the fires that have been occurring at Bubbling Springs Park over the last couple of months. They actually began on May 5th, and we're going pretty steadily every week until June 27th. If there's 3 pictures there of the actual fires and the fire department responding, and then about a month ago, somebody wrote on the Little League field snack bar, City of Port Hueneme, clean the creek like you take care of these baseball fields, I believe is what it ultimately says, which we believe was written by the actual arsonist sending us a message. So if you review all the dates and times in there, you'll notice a pattern. Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And if you look at the times, beginning roughly at 7 a.m. all the way up until a little after 8 o'clock, where most of the incidents were happening. So we started deploying officers out during those time periods to actually, in an attempt to catch the assailant. Well, sure enough, as all things work out, the suspect was captured on a Saturday at 7 p.m. as he was lighting a fire. An alert family who was barbecuing out in the park saw this occurring, went after the subject, got him to stop, and our officers immediately responded and detained the individual, interviewed him. He admitted to all the arsons, and it turns out that he's a 21-year-old resident of Port Hueneme. He is a special needs individual, and so we are submitting the case to the district attorney's office for a review to see if they are going to pursue prosecution. We have been assured by his parents that this activity will not continue during this time until we can figure out exactly what the district attorney's office would like to do, or if they even want to consider making him a arson registrant or getting him the special attention that he needs for these types of incidents. And during his interview, he admitted that he did not like all of the brush and how it was not being tended to, and so he was going to do something about it himself. And as Public Works Director Don Villafana has mentioned many times, they can only clear up all the way up to the water's edge, and they can't do anything about what's in the creek without getting special permission, and hence the predicament that we're in right now. But I wanted everyone to know that we've captured this individual. Marijuana dispensary update. We currently have 5 that are approved. 1 is a medical dispensary, that's Freedom First. The other 2 are adult use recreational, which would be Hueneme Patient and From the Earth. And then 2 others that have been approved but are not open yet. This past couple weeks ago, I had a meeting with all the security companies to go over my expectations, to go over all the guidelines, to make sure everyone was on the same page for the 3 dispensaries that are currently open. I plan on having mandatory semi-annual meetings with all our dispensaries to going over best practices, guidelines, trends, and having a discussion with them about what's happening in the city, especially with their businesses. And something that we are currently doing that I know no other city does, we require identification from all of our dispensary employees. And rather than having the dispensary create their own employee ID cards, the police department is actually deploying these cards. They're making them in-house. They're security cards. They cannot be duplicated. When you come in and get live scanned, you have your photograph taken, and upon approval, each dispensary gets their own customized card. So when an officer goes into a dispensary, they can ask for their card. Current practice was the dispensary simply printed something out that they wore around their neck, which could easily be, we'll say, counterfeited in the sense that if they needed someone to be employed that evening, they could immediately just print one out. In this case, they can't do that, and so we are assured that everyone that's got one of these cards is actually a certified employee for each one of our dispensaries. And these are the types of things that we're trying to employ and actually create our own trends in the cannabis industry here in the state of California. Several months ago, in March, when I gave my update, I talked about all the illegal delivery services in the city of Port Hueneme and Oxnard, and I sent out a letter, as you can see there in the middle, warning all of the dispensaries listed on the left here that were on Weed Maps and Leafly that within the next 6 months we would be conducting an operation attempting to catch all of these illegal delivery services. So I held to my word nearly 5 months to the date. Our narcotics task force conducted an operation. We set up 7 transactions with these delivery services. 7 people actually listed on that list there. 5 actually delivered to us. 2 actually refused, saying we will not deliver to the city of Port Hueneme. So I'm hoping that my letter actually had some sort of influence. And so the 5 delivery services were all contacted, identified, items seized, and we will be submitting these cases to the district attorney's office for prosecution for the illegal distribution and transportation of cannabis, which is a felony in our state, as they are not operating without a state or one of our city licenses. As soon as that gets done, we are going to publicize this to make sure everybody has a clear understanding that it is illegal to operate in our city without a license or a permit. And hopefully this has some sort of impact and actually promotes the businesses in our city that are actually licensed. Here's a picture of the 4th of July. If many of you didn't get a chance to go out there, I wanted to show everybody just how busy it was. I'm unaware of any other day that has so many tourists or residents or people in our county actually visit. This is a picture I took at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon on the 4th of July. You can see the shoreline also that's completely full. Here's one direction, and here's in the other direction. You have hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there, which is quite an ordeal or quite a task for not only the lifeguards but for the police department. I'm not aware of any significant incidents that occurred out on the beach during this time, whether they were lifeguard related or police related. So which leads us into the 4th of July actual fireworks and our enforcement. So this year we issued 9 citations for the illegal use of fireworks, 2 involving our host ordinance. We did find that people are adjusting and getting a lot more creative in adjusting our host ordinance, meaning they are not lighting off their fireworks in their driveway or in front of their house anymore. They're either using their backyard or they'll go light the firework off in their driveway and they'll take the evidence with them back into the house. So we're going to adjust next year, and we're going to have a lot more people undercover actually watching these individuals and taking pictures. But here are just a couple examples of the types of fireworks that we're getting. Which I wanted to show you too is because these are not the types of fireworks that the city of Fillmore are selling. These are actually illegal fireworks in the state of California. So they're getting them from other states and from other countries, and so you can kind of see the problem that we are dealing with, not only citywide but countywide. Because if you looked out your window, there was these mortars going off all over the place, and they're not selling these types of fireworks in Fillmore or in the state of California for that matter. So people are bringing all of these fireworks in, which is quite a challenge to try and stop from happening, which is a big problem because people really are very passionate about this when they call us and want us to do something about it. So as you can see up there also, we had 60 calls for service specifically related to fireworks on the 4th of July, and which is results to about 50% of our phone calls on the 4th of July are fireworks related. Here's a picture of an actual incident we responded to on the 4th of July evening where somebody was lighting fireworks in their backyard, and they lit a firework, an aerial firework that misshot and went into one of their umbrellas in their backyard, which lit the umbrella on fire, which was near the house, which got a full fire and police response. And so again, just to express the dangers of these types of fireworks and the types of calls that we're responding to based on the illegal use of fireworks in our city. So just a quick update. We've taken back all our body-worn cameras. Officially today, we are now using digital recorders. All our officers are now mandated to use digital recorders on all their contacts, which will now be downloaded in an evidence-based system, which means they cannot in any way edit or delete any types of files, which is really the best practices right now in local law enforcement. To give you a quick staffing update, we have 22 sworn positions. Unfortunately, now we have 2 vacancies that we just recently posted for. We still have 3 officers at our IOD and 1 officer in field training. I did speak, we have an open hiring process right now, and we are seeking lateral or academy complete officer applicants. And we'll be testing here in the next month or so for those positions. I will be coming back in the month of September for a request for funds because in our budget we only allow for 1 police unit at this time, and I had brought to you almost a year ago now The state of condition of our units, as 6 of them were purchased in 2011 at the same time, and now they're all starting to break down at the same time. You approved purchasing an extra one last year, and so we'll be coming back to council in September to request an additional unit because a lot of them are in excess of 100,000 miles at this time. We completed our master training plan this past month, so the Port Hueneme Police Department now has a master training plan, which they've never had. It's a 30-page document that outlines all their required training, what would be considered beneficial, and what type of training they're allowed to go to, and what type of training the department will actually pay for. And then today, we read the first reading of our DUI ordinance. If all goes as planned, the second reading will get approved on September 4th, with the ordinance going into effect on October 4th of this same year. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Okay, excellent work. Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief Salinas, you're amazing. The smoke detector installation, that's fabulous. It's a great public outreach. Thank you. Keep that up, please. Is there any, or has there been seemingly any uptick since we've just, for the last week or two, got into the recreational marijuana? Any extra problems, or is it kind of normal?
In terms of uptick in problems in and around the dispensaries, no.
Okay.
I can't answer in terms of an uptick, let's say, of use by the beach or in the parks.
No, I mean,
but in terms in and around our dispensaries, no, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And one other thing. Thanks again for the fireworks. 9 citations. A lot of my people are at Hueneme Bay is really berserk, as you well know.
Yes.
And we live right on the border, man. You know. Thanks. Keep up the good work, please.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Sharkey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, what I noticed at the beach on the 4th of July, there was a little flurry right at the beginning, and then it stopped, and I saw blue lights out there, and it seemed to calm down pretty quickly. So.
Yeah, as quickly as we could get to them. We had 4 officers out there on the beach once it got dark out there, but as soon as they turned their back in one direction, somebody was lighting them off. So there may have been onesies or twosies going off, but there sure wasn't any type of fireworks show out there on the beach.
It was quieter than some other years. And we always discuss the property crimes, and that seems to be what's happening. What types of property crimes are we seeing?
Primarily theft from vehicles, and we've had an uptick in burglaries.
In burglaries?
Yes, vehicle burglaries. Yeah. Not necessarily residential.
Mostly, so it's mostly people leaving stuff in their cars?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know, is this tie into the opioid epidemic we're going around? You think that's a
yes,
factor, or is it just crimes of opportunity?
A lot of our thefts are shoplifts. In fact, over half our thefts this month are actual shoplifts. And due to the decriminalization of petty theft and of narcotics, now making it a misdemeanor for you to possess a dangerous drug, or if you get arrested for a petty theft and have prior convictions, it used to be a felony. Now it's essentially a fine, and these criminals know it. Mm-hmm. So the risk reward in terms of going into the Rite Aid or Save-Ons or CVS and shoplifting, the penalties for that are nearly non-existent, and they know that. And so that's something that we're trying to deal with.
So is it a repeat offender issue?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know a few years ago, right after Rite Aid opened up, they were having a problem, and we had the chief at the time when, you know, we did a little program with them to look at their displays and how the store was laid out and try to get a little more security in there. It's, I don't know if they're still up to snuff on that. Are we working with the store owners on the defensible space, I guess I should say? Or?
That's actually a very good question. An example of that would be our CVS store that's going to open up at Pleasant Valley and Ventura Road. I was part of that process with the planning department, and I instilled certain alcohol requirements, meaning no beer mountains, No, obviously, alcohol sales through the drive-through. They couldn't sell singles. A lot of that stuff, cabinets needed to be locked by 2 p.m. There could be no visible alcohol in the front of the store. Things of that to help prevent theft and that type of shoplift.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? No, so I have something. You're doing a fabulous job on making sure that we're walking out the plan with regards to the marijuana ordinance, medical cannabis, and it looks like the, personal use. So I'm thinking that you could probably offer best practices conferences to the other cities because of everything that you're putting together for us, including this last one where you're catching those that are distributing illegally in our city.
Yes, I know other cities are going to start adapting that plan, as well as I've had phone calls from Thousand Oaks as they start to roll out their dispensary, and they've been consulting with me in terms of what we've been doing and some of the recommendations that I've put in place.
Well, kudos to you, because we're a small city.
Yes.
And we're providing best practices to the big ones, so that's great. Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, good work. All right, thank you.
Okay.
So we move on to Community Development Director reports and comments, and that's Mr. Tony Stewart.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council, staff, audience. So this is our second quarterly report for you, and I'll get right into it. Have to bear with us being a little slow. There are a lot of graphics in here that kind of sucked up the memory, and our slow system here doesn't do too well, but anyway. So jumping right into Planning and Administration Division of the Community Development Department. We've done a couple of things in the last quarter. First, and you'll see this hopefully in person in the next few months, is a new master sign program for Mandalay Village, which is, the Ralph Center. The on-building signage will stay basically the same, but what they're proposing to do is a new comprehensive freestanding sign program. So they'll be replacing all of the freestanding signs along Channel Islands. One of them will actually disappear because it will be replaced with a corner treatment that you see here to better advertise the center, but also to provide additional signage for the tenants that don't necessarily have street frontage right now. So the other freestanding signs will have a little bit more sign area in each one, and right now they've got the pitched roofs, or the pitched tops, and those will be flattened out a little bit. They'll still have some of the arched elements around the actual sign bases and whatnot, be colored to match the building stucco treatment and whatnot. But it'll just be an update for the overall center. The other thing that we did, which was a little bit more complex than I thought it would be, was the 2020 census has actually started. The first phase of this project is to identify basically the location of every resident or residence here in the city. And so what the census did was they sent me a spreadsheet with identifying what they thought was every unit here in the city, and then there were corresponding maps, little dots that show the approximate location. And the whole purpose of this is to get it to the folks that are actually going to be preparing or doing the census tabulations, going out door to door and working with folks. So this was the first step in the process. I was thinking that since we didn't have a whole lot of development in the last 10 years, that there'd probably be a couple dozen additions and whatnot. I was a little wrong. It was close to 500 corrections, actually, dating back several decades, actually. So, the importance of having all of these units counted is that not only do we know who is here, but it also can be used for federal programs down the line and whatnot. So there was quite a bit more work that was basically entailed in this project. I'm happy to report that I think I caught everything. Hopefully I did. It was all due on June 21st, and we got everything in on time. The census folks have recognized it. They have not gotten back to me with any corrections needed, so fingers crossed it stays that way and they move on with the rest of the project over the next couple of years. I wanted to give you also a fairly detailed update on where we are in the cannabis business world here in the city. Chief gave you a little bit of a summary. So we do have several businesses that are open here in town. This is actually DBO, or From the Earth's brand new dispensary that opened on July 3rd. The inside of it's actually a very nice facility. They've got high-end cabinetry in there. We've got the menu boards, nice floors, and it's a fairly comfortable place to, at least it appears to be. And I haven't been in since it's been open for business, but this is what it looked like just before opening. And they are our third dispensary open, but the first one to begin selling adult use products. So they do medicinal and adult use. They're located up at 2675 North Ventura Road. Emerald Perspective, which is going to eventually be located in the former Top Deck Bar. The plans have been in plan check for a little bit of time now, and we returned them back to the applicant for corrections, so we are awaiting the resubmittal. I believe the applicant's been out of town for a little bit, so hopefully we'll be seeing that resubmittal here fairly soon. Freedom First, or AKA Skunk Masters, also located at 2675 North Ventura Road. They were the first dispensary to open here in town. They've been doing a pretty brisk business. We had our monthly meeting with them today, and it looks like things are going pretty well. They will be selling adult products starting on August 3rd. Hueneme Patient Consumer Collective, or HPCC, which is up on the top floor of the Hardy Mall building at 501 Channel Islands, was our first dispensary that was approved, and they have started selling adult use products as of July 5th, and I understand that their business is also really has increased with the addition of the adult use products, which means also an increase in revenues for the city as well. And then finally, Port Retail is our newest approved dispensary. They will be located at 437 West Channel Islands, which is basically next to McDonald's, or just a couple doors down from it. And as you'll recall, this is basically the retail component of a larger cannabis business. The folks that own this company are in escrow with the city right now to purchase our Industrial Avenue project or property to have a cultivation and manufacturing operation there. I also just read in the Star today that these folks are the team that were chosen by the City of Thousand Oaks to be their one and only dispensary. So hopefully some of that will have an impact on our bottom line when they start with the cultivation and the manufacturing here and sell it both here in the city and in Thousand Oaks. We also have a few that are approved but not open yet. Safeport, which is over at 353 West Channel Islands. When they do open, they can go ahead and have recreational or adult use and medicinal. This is their tenant improvement underway right now, and we expect them to be open sometime in the coming month here. They're getting pretty close, so putting in the detail work.
Are they over closer to the Patterson intersection?
Yeah, or just off Bolker. They're the ones next to Casa Villa Mar and the former Realty office there.
Okay.
And then we have a Wheelhouse, which is owned by the folks that also purchased the Hardy Mall building. But this dispensary would be located in the two-story building right on the corner of Channel Islands and Wheelhouse on the first floor. Plans for this dispensary are in plan check review right now.
And that's in the former, like, insurance business office or something like that?
There's several suites down there.
Yeah, okay.
And then we have a few that are pending. Actually, we have quite a bit more behind this, but these are the four applications that or three applications plus one that will be coming in shortly. So Harvest Bloom is our newest. They just came in on the 5th, and they would be a delivery-only service in the same Wheelhouse/Channel Islands building that I just mentioned, but they'll be on the second floor. We're also talking to somebody about maybe having a small cultivation operation on that second floor as well, but they are looking into that because they'll need to have fire sprinklers added to the building, which is quite a significant cost. PH Green Group is also located basically right there, but they're in the two-story building where Mandarin House is on the other side of Hardy Mall, just to the east. And these folks are renting a couple of suites on the first floor, one for the dispensary and one for offices, but they're also proposing to occupy the entire second floor for a cultivation operation. We've been working back and forth, the review committee, with the applicants on comments and corrections that are needed to their application before we can move it forward onto the city council for action. Same with Tradecraft, who is located or will be located in what we call the Bolker Gym. So the gym just off of Bolker Drive, north of Channel Islands. And they are looking to propose a cultivation operation along with the dispensary. This will be kind of our first micro business, so to speak, where they'll have pretty much everything happening under one roof there with the exception of lab testing. And then finally, Port Industrial. I just mentioned the Port Retail component, and so Port Industrial is their clever industrial name, which would be the cultivation and manufacturing operation. And they'll be submitting that application, I would imagine, fairly soon once escrow closes. And like I said, we've been talking to a few others. I would expect at some point an application in for the self-storage facility at Surfside, which is for sale right now. We're taking bids, and I understand that it will definitely be a cultivation manufacturing type use that would obtain ownership of that property. And then we have a few other folks that are always looking. Jim Gilmer and Genesis, for instance, with what we call our Little Blue House down the street here is one that we're in negotiations with as well as far as potential purchase, and we'll be bringing that back, I would imagine, in September, depending on how the potential applicant responds to our paperwork and whatnot. So moving on from planning to building and safety. As built out as we are, we still have a very busy building and safety division. In the last quarter, we issued nearly 400 building permits for residential projects and another 22 for non-residential projects. So a total of 418 permits with a valuation of nearly $2.5 million. And these range from small things such as water heaters to room additions to tenant improvements. The bottom picture there is what's once the former building where Starbucks is going was leveled about a quarter ago. They were getting ready for the foundation, and the top picture is what it looks like as of last week, and really today, where the shell is nearly complete, and they're doing quite a bit of construction work inside for Starbucks tenant improvement. They'll be located in the west half, or I mean the east half or the left side of that building there, with an unknown tenant at this time on the other side, and then there'll be a drive-through going around the entire building. We took into plan check a couple of dispensaries, Port Retail and Emerald Perspective, as I mentioned. We have CVS Pharmacy. They are on Ventura, just up the road here, also in plan check. And I was hoping actually to get the resubmittal last week, but hopefully, well, basically at any time, we should be getting the resubmittal back from them so we can move forward. And then kind of exciting news is that the Victoria Mixed Use Project is actually slowly but surely moving forward. They submitted plans for what they call their piering or their foundation system, and once that gets approved, because it is a large building, I've got the water table and whatnot, so it's kind of a unique structure. And once they get that approved, then they can move forward with designing for utilities and the rest of the structure design there. Yes, sir.
If I may, thanks a lot, Mr. Stewart. Real quick like here, and maybe it's the police department. I see this fire here. Was that an accidental fire? Was it homeless people crashed back there and or any knowledge on how it started?
That I'm not sure about. Perhaps Chief Salinas does have that information. I know it started as a pallet fire back there on the dock there in the corner, and then spread to the electrical equipment. It was strictly exterior. There was no damage to the interior of the building other than it wiped out their electricity for a few days because it all burned to a crisp. But we have been coordinating the repair. We got the electricity back on late last week, and we'll be working with the folks to get the rest of the building done.
Sir, I was initially told it was an exterior electrical fire was the cause. That was on the night of the incident. I don't know if that's changed since then, but that was the preliminary investigation.
And just a couple other things going on. So we've issued building permits for several other dispensaries. Also up at Mandalay, PB&J's restaurant, Starbucks, as I mentioned, Menchie's, and this is their tenant improvement here right now. As you can see with the tenant improvements for these restaurants, they can be fairly complex. It's not just basically building walls and whatnot, but you've got whole new ventilation systems. Down on that larger picture, there are the floor tiles laying up against the side ready to go down. They have to rip up the slab on the bottom right picture to put in the new plumbing fixtures and whatnot. We've got all new electrical, as you can see in the upper picture on the right. So it's quite a complex process that our folks not only permit, but then inspect all the way through the process. We also have Century 21 and Bank of America, who is doing some ADA work out in the parking lot, the walkways, as well as relocating their night drop box. So that's also underway. We issued a certificate of occupancy, as I mentioned earlier, for DBO or from the earth. And hopefully by this time next quarter, the rest of these businesses that I mentioned above will also have their certificates of occupancy as well. Code compliance. We had our former code compliance officer left the city. However, we were able to promote Shirley Jackson. You may remember her picture from the last quarter where she's sitting there smiling at you from the reception area. She's still there part-time, but she has been promoted. It was an in-house promotion to our new code compliance officer position, and we're very excited about this because Shirley has some experience dealing with folks that come in after the fact to get their, say, their parking citations dealt with, or talk to staff, code compliance, whatnot. So she has experience dealing with our customers anyway, but she has an exceptional customer service set of skills, and so we're very excited to have her come on board as our code compliance officer. We've, in the last quarter, opened 289 code compliance cases. We are proactive here in the city, so not only are we taking complaints, but Shirley's driving around looking for new cases to open. We actually have really a three-fer up there on top where we've got no landscaping, unmaintained landscaping, and a bunch of furniture and other stuff laying at the curbside, which are all violations. And then when she drives around, sometimes she may notice a construction site that looks a little fishy, and she'll call in and find out whether or not they have a permit or not. In this case, this is a new trenching project and plumbing installation, and they didn't have any permits for it. So we stop that, and they come in and get their permits, and then we get it all up to code. So this is why it's important for what she's doing out there. She did abate, she and her predecessor abated 275 cases, and then we have about 114 that rolled over from the last quarter that are larger projects that take a little bit more time. With regard to parking enforcement, we've also had some changes in staffing. We are budgeted for 1 full-time officer and 3 part-time. We had turnover of 2 part-time officers, so we hired a new one, and then we are in the process, hopefully nearing the end of it, for hiring the second one, so we'll be fully staffed. We were a little bit down this past quarter because of the lack of staff, but we still managed to issue 1,562 citations, process 45 vehicle tow requests. And just on the 4th of July alone, we issued an even 100 parking citations worth over $5,300 to the city for various violations. And then the picture there on the screen is basically a no-no where somebody's decided to take up camping in front of a house. You can see the motorhomes all leveled, got the pop-outs. There's actually an extension cord running into the house there. And so we take note of that and get them to kind of move on to hopefully an RV park. So this is just one of our many things that our parking enforcement folks get to deal with every day, not to mention all the activity down the beach and also following the street sweepers around on Thursday and Friday to make sure that folks are off the street and out of the way of the street sweeper. And then the last division we have is our home rehab program. Jennifer came and spoke to you a couple meetings ago. Things are hopefully ramping up a little bit in the near future here, but she did issue 4 rebate checks for our home rehab program. A couple of examples here. We've got a new landscaping. We also have a new shower installation in a residence there. And so these rebates were about $5,600 worth of rebates, but they were for over $27,000 worth of improvements. And of course, that goes back into the house, and it raises the property values, property taxes, and all that good stuff. So it's an important project to have. We no longer have a first-time home buyer program, but we are still processing the loans for the former program. And so during this last quarter, we did have one loan repaid for a little bit over $31,000. And so with that, what's upcoming? We'll keep working on our home rehab programs, getting them back up to speed now that we have our building official / inspector to help us out. We're doing advertisement, not only by actually mailers, proactive mailers to folks that we think would be interested, but also code enforcement also provides notice, the mailers to folks that they are assisting. We'll continue, as I mentioned, to process cannabis applications, not only those that are in the pipeline, but those that will be coming up, that we expect coming up here. We'll keep working with our construction company, our construction projects such as CVS, Victoria, and whatnot. We have a comprehensive fee study, survey/study that actually kicks off this Wednesday, so 2 days from now, and this will be citywide, looking at all of the department's fees and whatnot, looking to see what adjustments are made, where we may not be collecting fees that we should, fees that should be raised and whatnot. So these are, say planning fees, building fees, recreation fees and whatnot. So we will have a large part in that process with all of the building and planning and code enforcement fees that we currently charge, and then looking at how we can update that and hopefully help the revenue situation here in the city. We will continue to work on the potential sale of what we call the Little Blue House, as well as the Pleasant Valley Road properties. And again, hopefully that'll be coming up in the next couple months, September, October. Now that the census is done, I get to start working with SCAG on their regional housing needs numbers, which is also kicking off, as well as our regional transportation plan. Comments on the first phase are due in October, so that's kind of up there on my list of things to do. And that'll be looking to try, one of the things we do is make sure that not only SCAG, but HCD, our state agency, has a realistic number of affordable units for us to consider planning for in the future, but not that we have an overwhelming number. We found that when I worked in Simi Valley for the last round, it was a real fight with HCD and SCAG, and so kind of preparing for that again, but we'll see where we are.
Be ready.
Exactly. And then finally, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's extremely active right now, but we have been working very hard on our Surfside Motel code enforcement project right now. So expect to get some additional news shortly on the next step, which will be occurring within the next couple days, actually. So that is my report for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff on this? Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Stewart. The first-time home buyers, I was glad to see that come back. We had a couple different versions of that involving different lending institutions and all that. The idea was originally that was going to be sort of a revolving fund. So where is that money going to now?
Well, like I said, the first-time home buyers program actually hasn't been restarted yet, because again, that's something that we'll need to look at with regard to finances. But we do have monies for such programs through our in lieu fee that we have been collecting for years now. We still have some successor agency funding as well that we can put towards programs for rehab, for assisting with the development of new low-income units. So we will be looking at and hopefully kickstarting some of these actual loan programs, and it will most likely be again an evolving type.
So when we collect these funds, that goes back into sort of the rehab loans and things like that.
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's good. The RANA thing, I've been through three of those things. Have we started meeting with the rest of the county on this?
No, not yet. So that's part of this next stage here is, taking a look at what SCAG has given us with regard to the sections of the city to see where we are and whatnot, and then seeing if, for instance, one of the things we'll be looking at is making sure that they are not considering a park as a place to develop, low-income housing or any kind of housing units for that matter. So the first step here is to look at the accuracy of what they've given us, and then once we get to that point, one of the next steps coming up here later next year, early next year, will be working with the other agencies and kind of wrangling amongst each other.
So you've been in Ventura County before, so you have some of the some of the history on that. It can be pretty entertaining how it works out.
It was pretty ugly, I remember. Yes.
Well, as I recall it, all the community development directors got together and they were trying to be really accurate and very precise, and then the city managers came along and says, hey, how about we just do it this way? And everybody said, okay, let's do it that way. And it worked out. Then the first time around, nobody even took it seriously until it was too late. So I think we've developed some track record, and hopefully, the numbers we start with are going to be a little more realistic based on past history, because we have a past history now. So anyway, so good luck with that.
Thank you. Yeah. I do know that the last round...
Others will carry that forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Burke?
Thank you very much, Tony. Great report. Thank you. Very comprehensive. I attended recently a American Association of Water Agencies meeting. It was a water issues committee, and Ventura gave a report on how they're helping homeowners with their front yards, coming in with grant dollars to actually help them design and build, water tolerant yards with succulents, what have you. I don't know if there's any place for us to be able to piggyback on what they're doing or learn more about what they're doing, but just something I saw, it was really interesting. They're doing a good job over there. Another question. Along Channel Islands Boulevard, where many of our cannabis shops are going in, from McDonald's down to Wheelhouse, Patterson to Wheelhouse, is that broken up into different ownerships?
Yes, yeah, for the most part it is. So each one of those shopping centers has its own owner. The only one that doesn't, if we go start at the west end, of course we've got Oliveira Plaza, right. Which is basically one, right. And then Mandalay, which is one, and neither one of those is even renting towards cannabis folks. Then we have a little bit further east, the buildings, the Hardy Mall, and then one next to it. That's one ownership. But then further on down, each of those little centers has a
Plaza
unique
Del Mar
ownership.
is privately owned.
Right.
Okay. Because I'm noticing that some of the frontage landscaping is really coming along. They're cleaning it up quite well. One of them is not.
It would probably be in front of the hotel?
No, not in front of the hotel.
Okay.
No, although I didn't cross Patterson. I was going the other way.
Yeah, I've got a code compliance case on that one, for instance, so just let me know what they are.
What kind of things can we do to encourage them?
Well, if it's a property maintenance issue, we do have ordinances that, so we have code enforcement kind of encourage them a little bit to basically maintain the property and bring it up to snuff. If it's, say for instance, if we have a new cannabis business come in, we can put a condition of approval on the CUP, for instance, that requires them to basically maintain it. That's something that they kind of have to work out with the property owner, but it really generally is a property maintenance issue, and so if there's a complaint, it comes into code enforcement, and they will go ahead and send them a nice letter or two, and let them know to just please clean up their property.
Channel Islands and Ventura Road. Now let's cross the street. There's a fence line there, and a federal institution that's over there. Who handles that landscaping along that fence line?
I am going to let the Public Works Director answer that question because it's been a recent discussion. So there's that's something I believe we're going to work out. But I don't want to step on his toes.
I'm hearing comments too around the neighborhood. All
so
around
there's been some recent work. I don't know if you saw it last week, but we actually did have our crew out there working on that.
And I was told about it too.
Yes. Yes. So, but Mr. Villapana may have a little bit more detailed answer for you real quick.
Yes, Councilman Berg, that is federal property, that strip. However, we did, at the request of the city manager, and it had been done several times previous. My predecessors had occasionally cleaned it. And what we did is, we are now using the probation crews 4 days a week, and it's an excellent leverage of our funds. For about $600 a day, we get a crew of 8 to 10 people on probation with a correction services officer, and under the direction of 2 of our landscape people, they can get a lot of work done. We use them every Monday we have the crew out there cleaning the beach, and we use that crew for 2 days, 2.5 days to clean that area in front of the Navy base.
Hope you're not going to put Mr. Gama out of work, are you, out there on the beach?
He's doing the beach, right?
That's Steve's beach.
Well, we're trying to keep it clean for him.
Thank you. Tony, great report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jim, did you have any more comments or questions? I do have two questions. So on the census, do we include then the group that lives out on Hueneme Base because they're technically within the city?
We do not, though, and that was a question I specifically had for them. There's their own unique census for the folks on the base.
Okay, all right. And then on the SCAG numbers for Arena, where do the accessory dwelling units fall within that? Do we get to categorize if somebody does an ADU, does it count towards providing a home in the community?
Yes, it does.
Good.
Now, if it's not designated an actual low-income unit, it may not be able to be counted, but it still counts as a unit towards Arena. So yes, they do count.
Awesome. Okay. Great work. Great report. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we move on to Deputy City Manager reports and comments, and Ms. Linda Lee, you have the Citizens Advisory Commission as the item.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to bring back this item to your council. This is a follow-up to the July 2nd meeting in which your council expressed the interest to have a commission comprised of 10 members. The item before you is to rescind resolution number 4197 adopted by your council back in February of 2018, and then to approve the new resolution comprising of 10 members commission. Once this adoption is done, staff will move forward with notifying the applicants, sending out communication letters, and disseminating the information to your council for your interviewing process. And that concludes my remark.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
After our discussion last meeting, and I was, reviewing in my mind what we had decided, direction we wanted to go. I'm beginning to feel as though perhaps 10 people on the committee might be a little overkill. It would require at least 6 of them that would have to be present at all times for a quorum. That might exercise some challenge to sometimes achieve. Just a thought, I don't know if the rest of us would want to reconsider that number, maybe go back down to 5. There's only 5 of us, but certainly, I'm willing to go along with the consensus, but I'm having second thoughts now.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Well, we had, the history, of course, was we had originally 5 applicants, and then we had 15. And if we're looking for particularly geographic distribution. I think we got a better chance with a larger number. And as far as quorum goes, it might actually be easier to have more people involved. You know, I understand what you're saying, but in terms of the type of committee this is, I think it would be actually easier for the committee if there were more people involved than having just 5.
Councilmember Fig.
I appreciate Mr. Berg's reflection on what we discussed, because one of the things I don't see here is the sense of impatience. This has been an initiative now that's been going on for over a year. Whether it's 10, 5, 15, or 100, let's just get it done. If there's a political issue here and a concern that some of us may not be here come December, I'll gladly give up my votes to my colleagues, and they can split it up. But I think we're shortchanging the community because we've been carrying on with this issue far too long. And this is not directed to you, Linda. This is an issue that this council agreed upon well over a year ago, and here we are still screwing around with numbers. $3,500 you've spent so far. This is not general fund money. I hope that you're not charging to the general fund, because we had $10,000 allocated under the Community Enhancement Fund. But that doesn't mean that we ought to spend the balance, $6,000 or $7,000, to develop guidelines and procedures and policies. I don't want to see this thing turn into another council protocol exercise where we went from a 5-page document to 30 pages and it wasn't adopted. So, Mr. Berg, my feeling is I don't care how many people we have on this committee. We just need to get on with establishing it. It's a sense of impatience and urgency that I'd like to express to my colleagues.
I agree. I'm ready to take a vote.
Councilmember Hensley. So,
Go ahead.
yeah, I have a question too, so hold on just a second. Councilmember Hensley. Don't be quick.
Councilman Fig has a point. We've procrastinated on this thing for more than a year now, and I'm kind of flummoxed, but I'm not on it, so I don't have to worry about it. It's one of those things. I've been taken away from all those duties, thankfully. So I kind of like the idea, because of what Councilman Sharkey's brought up here, is that there's a broad spread of people spread across town. And I know the people down on the beach, they're going to have their crowd and welcomed to it. But I think we need kind of a mix, kind of a pollination of it too. So is there any way, Mr. Attorney, that we can say a 10-member board, but if they go down to 7 until somebody gets replaced, you have an adjustable quorum? Can you make that into the bylaws?
Well, a quorum is a quorum. Under state law, it's a majority of the designated body. I don't see how we could have an adjustable quorum. You could design, I think we'd be sometime doing this, but we could design a committee that would have a different number based upon events that you may decide would affect it, elections or whatever, that would change the number and which would also change the quorum. But if the council's consensus is to move forward with this, then I think that trying to do too much with details like that is going to take a lot of time.
Okay, you already have questions coming up?
Yeah, I have questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions? No. All right. So, thank you, Ms. Lee, for updating us on this. I know, it's taken a while, but it's really the consolidation of all kinds of informational duties, as well as notifications, as well as trying to grow the committee of applicants from 5 to more than 5. And so I know that that is a longer process than just maybe turning it into something in 1 or 2 months. So I appreciate your diligence on this, your expertise, because you know how to run these commissions and everything else that, that it entails. So thank you for getting us to this point. I appreciate your work. Yeah. So is there a, yes,
I move that we
Councilmember
strike out
Hensley?
410 at this point. But let's get moving on the thing.
I'm sorry, was your motion to maintain the 10?
10, yes, sir.
All right, so you're moving the recommendation of staff?
As it
Yes.
stands from
Okay,
staff.
thank you.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So, is there going to be other actions that you need relative to this item, not just the number of people?
Well, just to recap.
Because
your-
my concern is urgency. It's high time we get this thing done.
So to
And
recap.
so that's the motion I would like to make to this council, is to direct staff to bring this back at the earliest possible date. There are models out there. City of Oxnard, our own ordinance already has a relative skeleton structure for commissions. We don't have to spend 3 months drafting up a whole new constitution. So that would be my request to this council is, fine, 10 members, but let's get this done next month, because we're going dark in August. Let's say first meeting in September.
Okay, so I had heard four yays on the motion? Were you a yay or a?
I'll abstain.
Okay, so just wanting to make sure. So 4 approvals on moving forward with the 10-member and making the adjustment to the resolution, or a new resolution then. So 4-1, so motion carries, and
Thank you.
congratulations, and we move forward then on the next steps.
Madam Mayor, it's 4-1 abstention.
That's right.
You said 4-1.
Oh, 4-1, okay. 4 for approval and 1 abstention. 0 no and 1 abstention, right?
So do we have an opportunity to entertain the motion that I offered, which was to direct staff to bring this back for actually physically establishing this body, the first meeting in September?
I would say that the motion was already made and carried in 4-1, but I believe we could just direct staff to move it forward as fast as possible.
Mr. City Manager and Mr. City Attorney, is there anything wrong with me in making that motion to this body?
Well, the motion's not on the agenda, so we have a Brown Act problem with the motion, but.
So the only item on the agenda is simply the number of people?
No, the item on the agenda is to, because the council directed the number of people last time, was to rescind the old ordinance resolution, which was inconsistent.
So this is only about number of people? Is that what I'm hearing?
Basically, but that, if I may continue it, the council can certainly give direction as to council, to staff as to what they want to accomplish.
Then I would ask this council to give the direction that I've been trying to give.
Didn't I just summarize it? But yes, we have it noted. Thank you, Councilmember.
Your council may
Would you like to repeat that, Madam Mayor, just so that we have it for the record?
No,
Thank you.
I think it is on the record. I had already said that before you.
So we can
you
expect this to
mentioned
be in September, that we'll have this body established.
it. I said that as quickly as
Thank you,
possible.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fig.
It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome. All right, so then we move forward to, thank you, Ms. Lee. We move forward to item number 12, City Manager Reports and Comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and members of the council. Tonight, we are requesting that the council authorize me to enter into a program development agreement with NG Services US for a comprehensive energy conservation project at all of our city facilities. I'm going to be real brief with my report because we do have some guests here tonight from NG. If the council decides to move forward tonight, they're going to be involved in this project for probably at least a year total before it's all completed. So we wanted you to have a chance to meet them and find out a little bit more about the company and what their experience is, their expertise. The one thing I wanted to mention is that we followed a process that included a request for qualifications earlier this year. We had fewer responses than I thought we would have. We had 2 responses. The good news is that they were both good quality companies. So we had NG, and then we had Climatech which you may have heard of as well, that both are experienced in doing these citywide facilities assessments and then implementing any energy efficiency improvements that come out of the analysis that's done. There are really three reasons that we wanted to move forward with this. The most important one, in my mind, is to potentially save money, depending on what their study finds in our utility costs long-term, to really reduce our energy consumption and therefore reduce the expenditures in that part of our budget. Second reason is to potentially fund some improvements at our city facilities that we might not be able to pay for otherwise. And the first example that comes to mind is heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems that we know at several of our facilities are very old, inefficient, and creating issues for the conditions in the workplace. And these projects can often identify improvements to HVAC systems that can then be paid for with the savings over time from the lower energy and the more efficient equipment that's installed. So that's just one example. And then, of course, the third reason would be to make a important statement about the city's commitment to being environmentally responsible and to model that for the community. Again, I think the most important is the financial aspect of it, and I've already told the folks at NG that if they can't come back with a program that makes sense financially, I'm going to have a problem bringing that forward to the council with a recommendation to move forward. It needs to make sense in terms of saving us money in the long term. So with that, I'm going to ask...
Yeah, before we go in laying the groundwork here, we did a very similar thing with the Regional Energy Alliance a few years ago. We actually, they got us some funding. We replaced the HVAC system in this building, and we did some improvements around the city. So with that as a baseline, I'm going to need to hear what additional value added there is here to the work that's already been done through REA.
Okay. So I think my first response to that would be that this would take a look at basically everything in the city, lighting, HVAC, any other major electrical consuming equipment, including, for example, the water treatment plant. So things that may not have been looked at during the REA analysis.
That survey exists somewhere, and off the top of my head, I don't remember the inventory that was considered, but I know it was pretty wide-ranging as far as city-owned properties go, and we did make some major changes as a result of that.
Seems like it was more than 4 years ago.
It was more than 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and we've done little things here and there too. There, again, through the Alliance, I think probably maybe 9 months to a year ago, we did some lighting replacement that Edison actually funded for us. So we've tried to take advantage of smaller programs, but the difference here is this will look at everything in the city, including potentially even solar generation, if it makes sense financially and if we have the room to do it at any of our facilities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony Lamino from NG, and I think he has at least one member of his staff he may want to introduce as well, but he'll tell you more about who they are and some of the specifics of what they would be doing for us if the council chooses to move forward.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, city staff, thank you for this opportunity. I will definitely get to some of the comments that you made and talk a little bit more about our program. But
could you move the microphone?
Yeah,
there you go.
My coffee ran out about an hour ago, so if I talk softly, just give me the kind of the signal.
We'll throw something at you.
Yeah, that'll work. That works too. What I wanted to do is first introduce my colleague, Wendy Yu, in the audience with me, and tell you a little bit about our company, go through some slides, but really get down to the crux of what this program is and what this partnership is and what it could mean to the city. NG Services is a division of NG Corporation. We're based in France, the largest independent energy services company in the world. What that means to you is you're dealing with someone who has the financial fortitude to engage in projects like these, deliver results, and stand by a performance guarantee. And I'm going to come back to that because that's an important part. I also know that this works. There's a delay, I've been told. And we're waiting.
There you go.
Is it though? There we go. I'm going to skip forward a couple of slides since I'm the last one between you and going home. So let me get right to the Energy Services US and our experience. One of the things that we focus on is 3 dimensions of energy effectiveness. It's not so much as us walking by and shutting lights off. We can save you a lot of energy by shutting off your air conditioning system. We can make it practically unusable for your spaces. It doesn't do anything for your employees. It doesn't do anything for the city image. What we like to do is the effectiveness of your energy consumption. That's from a sustainability standpoint. This is not working. There we go. Here's a little more about us. We'll go beyond that. That's from a sustainability standpoint, to make sure that the energy resources that you use are clean, if there's renewable opportunities. Very efficient. Again, every time you turn something on, we want to make sure that it's used as efficiently as possible. It's the best decision that's possible, and that it's usable and it's effective. Again, what good is it to have dim lights in your city office, and people are straining their eyes to see what they're doing on a day-to-day basis? That's not going to help anybody. We can save you on an electric bill, but it's going to impact other operations within the city. Do I just keep on clicking? I'm clicking away. I'm clicking that one. No, I'm clicking the wrong one. Okay. There we go.
Right
Multiple
side
value
versus left
streams.
side.
Like I said, the coffee ran out about an hour ago. One of the things that we look at, in addition to looking at comprehensive energy services, is what other impacts can we bring with these programs to improve the city? And by doing this, we look at capturing multiple value streams. Everything from a low risk, because we provide a performance guarantee aspect to the programs that we deliver. We include community engagement programs. So we actually, and I'll talk a little bit about this some more later as well, we actually look at engaging the high school students or other community students and teaching them to be energy ambassadors and going out to the community to help people in the community actually be a little more efficient. We look at the funding and funding opportunities, funding incentives. How do we leverage the money that's out there to the best way possible to bring a positive cash flow project? Of course, we're looking at city facilities, upgrading and modernizing them. From a comprehensive standpoint, we're not looking at one-off measures, looking at just lights. We're not looking at just HVAC. We're looking at a comprehensive nature. How do we make you as efficient as possible? And then we'll look at things like solar generation, other renewable generation, energy storage technologies in the most feasible, financially feasible aspect. One thing that I jumped over here is it's turnkey. Our approach, as we've done with hundreds of cities, it's a design-build approach. Okay, and this is a turnkey design build. We are single source responsibility for this project. That's something that's important when you're dealing with construction work. Sometimes you run into the problem where you have someone designing something and then someone constructing something, and then you start to get the finger pointing. We don't do that. As a single source of responsibility, it's our project. We own the development, we own the design, we own the implementation, we own the performance. We own that and respond back to you, back to the city under performance guarantee. I'm going to skip over this slide. I'm going to read to you all of these things. No, I'm not. But just to say that the breadth of and the scope of the measures that we look at are very broad. Again, comprehensive. Everything from lighting motion sensors, to HVAC systems, renewable generation, energy storage systems, and capturing all the grants and rebates that are available out there. As the city manager mentioned, the premise of this program, as we're engaging with the city, is that you're not sitting on a pile of cash to do an energy efficiency project. The project needs to pay for itself. It needs to be justified through the energy savings that we can generate, and in some cases the revenue that we can capture. But it needs to justify itself through the energy savings and the revenue generation that the project will create. You have electric bill. We will reduce that electric bill through the implementation of the project. During a period of time, if we find low interest funds that the city would engage in borrowing, you'll have to pay that back, a mortgage payment. We will guarantee that the energy savings will be greater than that mortgage payment. Positive cash flow. At the end of the payment term, then all of those savings are recognized by the city. This is an important component to understand. At the end of the day, the project itself as it will generate a positive cash flow or a neutral cash flow, will pay for itself from the savings that it generates, so there is no cash out of pocket from the city. That's the key element, that's the foundation. This is how we've done hundreds of these projects, and they've all started with these kind of conversations and started with this development phase. In order to facilitate these projects, we look at, again, various funding sources, whether it's low interest money, whether there's grants or rebates that are available through the California Energy Commission. There are tax incentives in some cases. A lot of them have since expired, but there's still a few out there that we as a public entity, as a private entity, we can capture these, but we pass them through to in different structures on how a non-taxable entity as the city can benefit from them. So we look at various means of financing. Again, that is also a strong element to these programs, in delivering these programs. I talked a little bit about the difference between the design build and design bid build. Again, it's single source of responsibility. The other key component here is as a design builder, we're working in partnership to co-author the scope. What is happening, what will happen upon your approval is our energy engineers will go out to all the facilities, we do auditing, we look at your bills, we look at your history, we look at the impacts of previous projects and see how successful they've been and document those. We'll come back with our ideas and sit down with your staff and say, does this make sense? The Director of Public Works is concerned about some of the roof conditions. Okay, well, how do we address those? Is there a way to fix those in the course of implementing a project? You talked about earlier, there was a comment by one of your citizens about, hey, let's bring let's use these parks later at night, the tennis courts without any lights. Well, I've seen the poles there. There's no lighting fixtures on top. Is there a way, even though it's going to use more electricity, is there a way for us to bring lights back to the parks, to the tennis courts, so that the community can benefit by those things? That is the partnership in a design-build partnership as opposed to a design-bid-build. You might ask, well, how is it that you know, how are you assured to get the best pricing? We run a competitive process. So we procure with our national national buying volume, the parts, the equipment, the materials, using our purchasing power. We look at local subcontractors and we have them bid on the work. We write scopes of work, they walk the jobs, we look at the best value. It's not necessarily the lowest price, and we all know what that means, but it's the best value. We also do the same thing when we're helping to identify funding sources. If it is a third-party investor, we run RFPs. It's a competitive process, and this is all transparent. It's open book. We present this information to the city to review. You can do this and go work on a program, an energy services program with a company like ours because of the California Government Code 4217. It was first signed in the mid-'80s. Again, I would say thousands of projects have been contracted and delivered under Government Code 4217, as long as it's an energy services and an energy-based project, and that the savings pay for the cost of the implementation of the project itself. Let me talk quickly about our development process. What we're presenting is the program development. It's an agreement that would establish a relationship between the city and NG Services, that we will go out there, we will commit our time and resources. We'll, of course, need time and resources from city staff to help us, but we'll identify, we'll do an investment grade audit. We'll identify, we'll count every light in the city, we'll document it, we'll identify all of those energy savings opportunities, energy storage opportunities, solar generation opportunities. If there's revenue opportunities, we'll identify those as well. At the end of the program development period, we will make a and again, I should say it's in conjunction with staff. So as our team is out there developing these things, we sit down with staff, we ask questions. It's again a co-authored scope. At the end of this process, we will deliver to the city this final co-authored scope, and it will be a very explicit list of what it is that is being proposed, a firm fixed price, and a performance guarantee with the methodology on how we propose to demonstrate to the city and track it over time how this project will save what we are guaranteeing. I jumped right over it and I said a firm fixed price. That's also very important. We are energy experts, you're experts in running cities. We don't expect to say and look to you and say that, you know, if we've missed something, we're going to come back and ask you a change order. That's the design, bid, build process. You're looking for contractors, are looking for people looking for engineers who made a mistake and looking for those exceptions to ding you. That's why you go for 10% extra. In a firm fixed price project with an energy services company like ours, that's it. If the project is a certain price, and let's say the spirit of the contract is we're going to be replacing a certain number of city-owned streetlights, and let's say we miss one or two, we don't come back to you for $1,000, $1,500 pops to get more. No, we own it. If the spirit is we're going to identify it, it's on us, and we're going to replace them all. There is a caveat. Anything hazardous, typically. If there's something that you don't know, how could we know it? So if there's things buried under the ground that neither of us are aware of, there is a clause and addresses those kind of issues. But again, the spirit is, as we go through all of your city facilities, we document all the air conditioning systems, we document all of the lights. If we're saying that we're going to retrofit the lighting in the council chambers, that's what it is. We don't come back if we've missed something, okay? The end of that, should the city wish to continue, we will move into the implementation phase. That's an agreement, a separate agreement. It's like a general contracting design build agreement. We would design, go through city permitting process, city plan check, plan review. We procure, we hire our subcontractors. Again, it's all under our direction. We're here, we're on site. It's not, we're not remote. It is us running the project, single source responsibility again, and implementing the project. After the city has approved the work, the project is accepted, we go through the final acceptance and closeout phase. If there's any ongoing services, such as maintaining PV systems or maintaining battery storage systems, we will offer that to you as part of the contract proposal to go on and continue with those services. It also enters the performance guarantee phase. So we will start our performance guarantee, our monitoring, and we'll start our reporting back to the city. So there's 3 phases. We're at the first phase right now, the program development phase. Okay. And let's say at the end of the program development phase, we can't find a project that meets those goals, that needs to be financially sound, that needs to pay for itself through savings. We can't find enough funding for it, let's say. We can't find grants, we can't find something. Well, a few things happen. Here is a decision tree. It's laid out in the contract. This is a lot easier to understand. So when we come back and we develop and we present the program, the proposal after the project development has completed. If the city, if we can answer the question, does the project generate enough savings to pay for the project? And the answer is yes, then we bring it forward for a council decision. Does the city want to continue with the project to be able to capture those savings? If the council approves and we move into an energy services agreement, that's that design, build, implementation phase, all of the costs that we've incurred right now roll into that project. Because if you think about it, what we're doing right now is we're doing conceptual design and preliminary development. In order for us to come back to you with a firm fixed price and all the pricing so that you can also make decisions on what to move forward with, we have a lot of engineering and development work to do. If the council again moves forward, then all of those costs, that preliminary development engineering work, rolls into the contract. Still, no money out of pocket for the city. If the council decides that, hey, you know what, it's just not the right time for us, then what we'll ask for is, we'll ask for an engineering fee reimbursement, and in this case, it's $40,000. And I'll tell you, we invest a lot more than that. And if you just start to think about the numbers, professional services, what it costs for professional services, we invest a lot more than that. Let's say that in the very beginning, we're developing this project and we find that, for instance, that the project that you did 4 to 5 years ago through the County Regional Energy Office, that you got it all, that there isn't any opportunity, then we shake hands, part ways. We give you what our assessment is, and we give you ideas. Hey, here's some recommendations. Why don't you think about some of these things in the future as some of those equipment, as it fails, you know, maybe you want to replace it with such and such equipment. But there's no longer an obligation to the city, and the program development agreement is void. That's how the decision tree is. That's what we call the decision tree for the program development. So that's the nuts and bolts. But here's the fun part. It's all about the kids, right? It's always about the kids. In addition to doing this work, we realize that, you know, there is such a grand opportunity to engage the community to be a part of this. And through the years, with some great city managers in support, we've created a program called the Capacity Project. And essentially what it is, it's where we will actually, again, engage with organizations. Could be the schools, could be the elementary schools, could be the high schools, could be something like the Boys and Girls Club. And we ask students to actually apply for an energy ambassador's position. We create an opportunity for these students to go through real-life experiences. They have to write a resume. They have to submit. They have to apply for a job. They have to interview, okay? We hire them all, but they have to go through this process. We also provide part-time pay for the students as well. So we'll provide full-time or part-time employment with pay for these students. They're trained to be energy ambassadors, and what that means is they'll go to community members who've signed up for this program. And in this case, you see the picture here, it says Simi Valley Conserves. We've done it in Simi Valley most recently. We've got a large program going on in Montebello Unified School District. But this is a branded, city-branded program. And there's a website and some other applications where students can sign up for it, and residents. The students are trained, again, as energy ambassadors. They go to your residence. They could go to all of the community and the housing authority, for instance. They sit down, they have a consultation. How are they using energy? Are there ways that they could lower their electric bill, their utility bill? Are there ways that they could change their behavior to use less energy, save a few bucks on their utility bill? It's also an opportunity for them to ask questions like, should I really buy an energy efficient refrigerator? What are the benefits? Should I really buy an electric car? If you were to go to the dealership, chances are you're going to hear, yes, yes, you should, yes, you should. So this is unbiased results. This is unbiased advice. The students go through the program. Again, they learn real-life experiences. The community benefits by having people engaged in this program. They get free advice. The city benefits by not only the statement of going out to the community, doing things yourself, but also engaging with the community and helping them on their utility spend. But then there's also the AB 32, where you have to keep track of, and eventually you're going to have to lower your greenhouse gas footprint, your carbon footprint. This can all lead toward those goals. I'm not going to talk anymore other than just to say that, again, let me flip to our Southern California partners. We've been doing this business for over 40 years. I've been at it for more than 20 years. Again, these projects start with just like this. It starts with an engagement. It starts with a conversation. It starts with our program development agreement. We go out and we find, is there a there there? And then we come back and we work out the details. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Okay, so thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions? Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Just one thing kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck in the beginning of your performance there, on PowerPoint. You had that nasty word, LNG. we battled LNG twice in this district here because everybody wanted to load the LNG in. And it was a big scam. It turned out that they wanted to use the ports to ship it out once they got it squared away. So you're not going to try to shove LNG down our neck.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, I'm kidding. No. Pardon for that. No, we do not. That is not a part of our business. Our business unit is energy services. As NG Services is energy conservation and renewable energy generation. If you had a landfill that we could capture some gas and do something with, that'd be another story. But no, we are not looking to do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Public-private partnership. When are we building? What's this project?
I haven't figured that out yet. That's what this first step is.
Okay.
That's within a few months, as we're developing it over time, we're identifying what those opportunities are. And so I can't tell you right now, I can't prescribe to you what it's going to be. And that's the beauty of this project, is that if we find that, let's say that the lighting project that you did 4 years ago is great, then we'll say, hey, that's great. You've done a good job. But what about these opportunities over here? What about looking at your streetlights? What about solar generation now? Now that you've made your building as efficient as possible, maybe it's time to invest in solar. Let's consider those things. That's what this effort is.
Yeah, Councilmember Fig.
Yes, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions. 40 years in the business, how many jurisdictions have seen that their initial outlay for the assessment phase was recovered through your project implementation?
All of those customers right there.
Okay, if that's the case, and I like your business model, but if you're so confident and your track record suggests that that's what's going to happen, why don't we reverse the fee arrangement? That you do this work up front for no cost, but if you're able to achieve savings on the project side, you get your $40,000 based on those savings.
You've just described our business model. That's exactly what we're proposing to you.
We have to put up $40,000 up front.
No.
Oh, we don't?
No.
So we have no money at risk.
You have no initial money at risk.
Well,
okay, for this.
What's the bottom line? Is the city on the hook at some point in time for $40,000 if things don't pan out the way you've described them?
If we cannot find a self-funding project that pays for itself through the energy savings that it will create, or the revenue generation that it will create, and we can't come to an agreement, then you're off the hook. No $40,000.
So there's no need for us to even advance $40,000.
That's up to you. But we're not asking.
Okay, I'm going to ask our city attorney and city manager, is this a mandated project or program? Because if it isn't, I don't want to see any monies come at risk out of the city's general fund. And we have a green partner down the street, the Harbor District, and they participate in a community enhancement fund arrangement with us. And I would want to seek whatever general funds that you were thinking would be charged to this endeavor come out of that community enhancement fund, so the general fund is not exposed.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea, and I would have no objection.
Well, of course,
to that.
the Harbor District would have to concur, but they're, after all, they like to advertise their.
Yeah, they're the green.
They're the green, corporation in this county.
Yeah, so right now.
But I'm troubled by this assurance. I don't want to, even if it's not general fund that ends up, having to foot the bill, is this assessment that we're going to be whole at the end of the day. Well, if that's the case, then why are we putting any money into it?
Yeah, the only scenario under which we would have to kick in the $40,000 is if they come back with a viable project and for whatever reason we decide not to do it. In that case, they have...
Well, it could be LNG, and we don't want to do that. So you understand my problem here.
Yeah, and you have to understand they will have put a lot of time and energy into that assessment. So if we say no, but it's very rare that they go into a situation where they can't
So my
find.
fundamental question is that this isn't a mandated project
No,
or
this is
program
something,
that
as
we
you
need
know.
to do.
No, as you know, this is something, when I first started, I added it to my goals list just because I believe in the value of doing this and the potential savings primarily. For me, it's really not about getting environmental brownie points, although it's nice for us to make a statement in that regard. But it's really more about being financially wise, because I've seen so many cases where these projects, especially when you look out over a multi-year time frame, they not only will save the city money, but they will fund improvements that we may not have money to do right now, especially out of the general fund. So, yeah, but no, we're not being, there's no reason we have to do this. No state law, no mandate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you have any questions, Mayor Pro Tem Berg? So thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
It sounds like it's a good thing to do. I would just encourage us to take a look at that report, plan, et cetera, off the shelf and kind of incorporate then, you know, maybe some of the findings there. Maybe that's the launching point of this whole study of what we did with the Regional Energy Alliance.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Sharkey.
Madam Mayor, questions for staff. We have a public agency here, which the city has recently joined, actually, after many years, that provides many similar services. And have you or anybody on staff had any in-depth conversations with REA staff as to what they can do?
Both when I first got here, first 2 or 3 months I was here, and then more recently about, you know, is this the comprehensive approach? Could the REA staff basically do that for us so we would not have to have an NG or a Climatech or some of the others? And their response was that they support cities doing this. They think it's a good idea and it's consistent with the mission of the Alliance, but they don't have the desire or the staff wherewithal to do what NG is going to do, which is basically be like a general contractor.
No, but they have other groups that work with them, and they have access to other funding sources. The structure has changed over the years with the public goods charges changing and all that sort of thing. So they don't have the internal capabilities they once had, but there are other folks that they're certainly aware of and work with. And just as a due diligence aspect, I'm just curious if we've thoroughly explored the public sector options that may be available to us.
Yeah, I think, again, based on the conversations that I've had with the REA recently, including recently, they are not capable of doing what an NG or a Climatech or one of these companies does in terms of bringing the expertise on board for the analysis to put the project together and see if it makes sense, and then to actually implement it for us. So yeah, I'm not aware of any other public sector. You know, we've tried to work with them on, like I say, this whole Edison lighting project. That was with cooperation from and support from the REA. But this is a totally different scope where we're looking at every city facility and things as diverse as solar generation, but along with lighting improvements and everything in between. So I'm not aware of public sector partners, whether it was our REA or whoever else, that would match what NG in this case would be able to do for us.
Yeah, well, so going back to Mr. Figg's question, I mean, if we, I'm not sure where this leaves us. If we don't find any viable projects, then there's no harm, no foul. Thank you very much. We walk away.
Right.
But on the other hand, if there are something that's there, whether we want to do it or not, we're just on the hook for paying it. If they identify a project that we could do, whether we decide to do it or not, we'll be on the hook for paying it.
Yeah, then the $40,000 kicks in to compensate them for some of their costs.
Okay.
If I could just say, again, it's the spirit of this is a co-authored scope. This is what we do. This is all that we do. if the project doesn't make sense, and if, you know, you've expressed certainly some opposition to things like natural gas or certain elements of LNG, those, we're not going to include those things. I mean, the goal here is for you to be happy. The goal here is for us to implement a project that we can put you on the list and we can do more of this business. We do a lot of this business. And again, this is our core. This is what we do. To get into a situation where we're coming down to a disagreement between a small scope of work, you know, we don't want that relationship. And I'm sure you don't want that relationship because you're going to be dealing with other contractors and vendors in the future as well. So it's a reputational issue on both sides, I might say. The goal here is to develop a project that makes sense for you. If it doesn't make sense, then again, we walk away. The contract is null and void, and you get some recommendations out of us for free.
Now, I do have a question for the city manager. So if we were to tap the community enhancement funds, are there still funds left over from this year's distribution, and or, you know, what's the case there?
Yeah, for the 18-19, which is the fiscal year that just started a couple weeks ago, those funds have been allocated to specific projects. So we would have to probably take it out of either leftover funds from the previous year or the next year's allocation. There's also the possibility of using enterprise funds. Some components of this project may be water and wastewater related, which would be an appropriate use for enterprise funds. So it would not have to be all general fund.
But the community benefit fund, looking forward, has to be agreed upon by the Harbor District.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's both parties have to agree on the allocations for each year.
Yeah. So then for that, we're not looking until 2019-20? 29, yeah.
Yeah, if the assumption is that all of the current year's money is used in exactly the way that it was allocated, we would have to look at a future year's allocation.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, just in regard to the Community Enhancement Fund, and the Harbor District's already done a great deal of work, certainly their lighting project and all that. I don't know if there's any future, if they would benefit at all by a partnership on this, and that would, you know, and then the community enhancement funds would come into play, and we could both benefit somehow.
Yeah, we've actually talked about, I would say in some areas the port is ahead of us, but again, they've got such a unique mission compared to what we do. But we have already talked about trying to, assuming the council wants to go forward with this tonight, get some face time with the leadership at the port and the NG staff to see if there's anything else where. And the other possibility is the school district, Hueneme Elementary. Again, they've done some of their own projects over the years that are kind of school specific, but NG does work all the time, possibly more school district clients and projects than they've done cities. So
yeah, I'd actually recommend the school district because when REA was formed, school districts were part of it. Then the law has changed, and you know, the public goods support for school, they were basically excluded from what could be done. It get restricted to municipalities and local governments, cities and counties. So there may be some, you know, eagerness on the part of the school district if they could participate as well, and that would, you know, the broader base you have, I think the better off we are.
And I think too, with the bond measure that just passed, that some of it is to retrofit and bring in technology, but also make them more, I mean, environmentally better, I believe. Yeah.
That's right.
Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of little quick questions. This is the elephant in the room, water, okay, or lack thereof. Do you feel that your organization, your company, has the science, the expertise to develop ocean-to-tap purification?
To develop, I can't speak to all of the NG resources that are available and what we're doing around the world and those kind of testing. To design, build, implement, own, operate, A desalinization plant, yes, that for sure we can do. And when someone mentioned a P3 partnership, that's the essence of a P3 partnership, where you have the authority, you're delivering a service, you have the revenue generating authority, but you're not desalinization experts to own, operate, and that's what we do, and that's one of our divisions can do that work. So depending if that's the kind of solution that you're looking for, yes, if you're looking to solve a brackish water problem, possibly.
Yeah, two of those issues.
Yes, yep. And I'd love to have that conversation. I can bring the right people in our organization to have that conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So is there a motion somebody would like to make?
Quite frankly, I'm not even sure what we're doing yet. Are we just authorizing him to make a proposal? And is there a value that we have to put up front to get this proposal?
So the recommendation is that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with NG Services.
Which is a pretty broad situation.
Well, on the terms that have been described
Yeah,
here tonight.
exactly.
And it doesn't say this, but I would want to see the contract before it's signed by the city manager to make sure it's consistent with what this gentleman has said and what the council understands, so. Yeah, well, let me just say this. I have been involved in other cities with very similar proposals, and a couple of the cities declined to do it, but most of them did do it. And every one of the ones that I was involved with that did do it had a savings in energy and was happy with the program. That doesn't mean it's a guarantee for us. It wasn't with this company. This actually is a much bigger company than the ones that I had dealt with, so that actually I think is a positive step. But if I can offer a legal opinion about it, it seems to me that your downside risk is fairly minimal, and although we have to negotiate what an acceptable program would be, it would only come into play if they came up with an acceptable program, which means it would save you money. And it would have financing attached to it, so it doesn't come out of your general fund. Then only if you said no to that would you be exposed to any kind of a fee. I think that's a fairly remote eventuality, in all honesty. And it would be a very difficult case, honestly, to probably try and prove in court, assuming they were foolish enough to try and collect $40,000 in a superior court in California. The bottom rule is if there's not $250,000 at stake, you might as well forget about it.
I reserve comment.
But anyway, that's from a legal standpoint. Whether you want to do this as a policy decision is up to you. It's my evaluation that from a risk factor, you have a very low risk situation here.
Yeah. So, Councilmember Sharkey.
Just a point of clarification. So this resolution authorizes the city manager into the PDA, which is the contract that we have in our packet. That's the contract.
And that's just for the program development. So it's the study phase, the feasibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Study.
I didn't get the packet in time to review the contract. So if the motion could be amended to say subject to city attorney review of the contract, then I would appreciate that. You know, these are pretty standard contracts. I've already negotiated probably 5 or 6 of them over the years, so I don't think there'll be anything unusual in it, but if there is, then you're going to hear about it.
Okay.
So, okay, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation subject to our attorney's review.
All right, is there a second?
No second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, so that's a no and not an abstention, right? That's a no.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you,
for
just
clarifying
to clarify. All right, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Madam
and
Mayor,
congratulations to France for the win in the World Cup.
Oh, that's right.
All right.
Thank you.
So we move on then to item 12B, Community Event Funding Proposal from REACH. And is this you, Mr. City Manager?
Actually, this will be Mr. Steve Kinney wearing his hat as the president of the REACH board. And I think that Councilmember Figg, in his role as the council liaison to the REACH board, may be commenting as well, but Mr. Kinney will start.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, this is certainly not as profound an issue as you were just discussing. I think it's more in the nature of a cleanup item, actually, because you remember we had a discussion a few weeks ago to try and clarify, there was some overlap and duplication in the description of the community enhancement funds, a portion of it that the city council was allocating to itself to support some community events and activities, and a sort of similar description to some funds that were being allocated to REACH. So we started to unravel that ball of twine, and tonight's sort of the next step in that process. In the letter from our board that you have in your packet, there is at the top of it a list of 7 of the community events that the REACH board is prepared to fund out of funds available for that purpose from the board. Of those, there are further down in the letter 4 events, namely Movies at the Park, Holiday Tree Lighting, National Safety Night Out, and the Food Truck Tuesdays, that in discussion, the board thought before we take action to kind of provide all the funding needed, we might pose that to the council as an idea for some joint funding there, just as sort of a partnership gesture that of the money requested by the organizations, rather than REACH paying for it all, that we would pose to you the option of us splitting that cost. So those events would be 50% funded out of the council's community enhancement funds and 50% from REACH. And those events would total, as you see, $4,750, of which you have reserved to yourself, $20,000 in total for events. So you don't have to look for the money. It's just your decision as to whether you want to spend it toward that end or not. And if it's your decision not to, for whatever reason, then we're prepared to go forward with our original commitment, which is to fully fund those costs ourselves. So we're not talking about jeopardizing the events tonight. They're not going to live or die based on your decision. It's just a matter of really whether you want to participate in the financial picture or not.
So the question I have is the money that's already been committed from the city, that's actually coming from the community enhancement funds? Or no? Yes?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. There was a category called community events.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question too. Weren't there some dollars from last year's senior holiday luncheon left over? I thought they had collected more money than the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
Where are those dollars?
They're in the REACH bank account.
Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Food Truck Tuesdays, that was a Chamber of Commerce event.
Correct.
And it's costing, what, $3,000, $1,500 from REACH and $1,500 from the city? Is that what you're saying?
That's the proposal from the chamber, just additional funds for primarily for marketing, but also to sort of enhance the tables and chairs and the seating arrangements out there, which cost from a vendor
It's a one-time expense
for the season.
for the season. Well, if they're buying chairs or something, you know,
Sounds like it's
my,
rental.
you know, I admit it was a chamber of commerce thing, so I don't know the business end of it, but I thought it was supposed to be self-sustaining. I mean, I don't see why we're putting $3,000 into it.
Simply in an effort to give it higher profile, more visibility in the community, hope that it grows as a result.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, you know, the objective is to get it to be self-sustaining, and then it winds up being subsidized. And, you know, I got a little heartburn, so to speak, with that.
Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thanks a lot, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Because the council, I mean, the chamber always hyped up these food trucks for the summertime. I thought it was great. I'll use the term, and it's not politically correct, but roach coach. For many years when I worked construction, you waited for that roach coach. But I kind of grew tired of eating out of those greasy things, and I'm sure they're a lot better nowadays. But coming down to the whole crux of the issue, I thought the chamber was doing it, and I find out the city's been putting in $3,000 a season for it. Are we getting compensated anything from these trucks, or we're just subsidizing them, or what?
Councilman Hensley, I'm not aware that the city has been putting any money into that event in prior years. That the notion of it being self-sustaining has been the case. It's just this year, to my knowledge, for the first time, the chamber has proposed the additional funding for the purpose of the additional marketing and exposure.
Yes.
Perhaps Mr. Butler or our finance director, what are we paying the chamber each year for the city?
There's really no annual ongoing support. There was some money, I think $19,000 that was allocated in the strategic action plan last year for a specified list of chamber needs. So this would be over and above that amount, but we don't do any ongoing, sustained annual contributions to the chamber.
I thought we had an annual stipend that we shared with the Chamber of Commerce. Did that go
May have been in past years.
It's changed over the years,
Has it?
especially with the new community enhancement funds that came into play a few years ago. But before that, there were some other projects that we worked on the chamber, like they really wanted to build out their website presence and do this whole big splash, and so we contributed like $3,500 maybe 4 years ago. So there have been some things coming in and out, but nothing necessarily like over the course of time it's been an exact amount. It hasn't been that.
Okay, thank you. And trying to clarify in my mind, the trucks come in, do they pay a fee on their sales?
I don't know. The chamber handles all that. I think they do pay a certain amount to participate.
It's a percentage that they pay the chamber, I believe, of the sales.
Does the chamber get the percentage, or do
The
we?
chamber gets it.
Okay, we put the money up and the chamber gets it.
And the city contributes free parking for the event as well. So there's also money that goes
Lost revenue.
lost revenue, but in-kind contribution from the city already. So I'd be willing to maybe, for the time being, remove the food trucks, but vote yes for everything else.
If that's your motion, I would second that.
That's my motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. All right, so let's see where we are on the agenda. So we are under 13, council member reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. Anything to report? We'll start with Councilmember Hensley. Nothing. Councilmember Sharkey. Councilmember Fig. Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Just got a quick report out on Saturday, please. Relay for Life is this Saturday, July, what is that, 21st? And from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock, the Relay for Life at Pacifica High School. Please be there.
Okay. I just have a couple of quick reports. I attended the Ventura County Council of Governments meeting this last week, and we did have a couple of things that we looked at. VCOG is actually agreed to pay Cal Lutheran $8,000 to conduct an impact evaluation on Safe Passages program. So that's where they go into locations where it's a high concentration of gang members, and they work constructively with educators and having the kids of elementary school age really gravitate towards, projects maybe after school and Saturdays, along with field trips and all kinds of other things. They introduce them to STEM programs, etc. And it's been really successful within 2 areas that Thousand Oaks Sheriff's Department is really monitoring. So VCOG has actually rolled out then a grant to Cal Lutheran to do a little bit of assessment on the program to see how it could be rolled out in other communities. So with that, we'll be looking at the study being completed in a few months and a report coming back to VCOG. And then we did actually hear back from the person on point for the County of Ventura in terms of homelessness. And so I know the one speaker came up at the beginning of the meeting, but one of the things that the Homeless Task Force has done this year is that they went out and they actually had like PDAs or iPads to record folks that were homeless. They've seen a bump up in terms of homeless kids. They've seen an increase in other measures, and they actually are tracking it so that they can be holistic in how they approach the homelessness issue. So, if it's someone who needs more services, if it's someone who needs a home, a transitional home. So they're looking at it from a case management perspective, but it was kind of fascinating what was shared with the group. And I know that whenever the count has happened here, and then the next year the count happens, is that Port Hueneme and Oxnard, chances are that we trade folks, so that one year we might record 7 homeless, and then the next year we only record 1, but then Oxnard increases by the 6. So it's folks transferring in and out. They did tell us that for the most part, that everybody who became homeless, for the most part, they are Ventura County residents. So it's not like we're having people gravitate to this area to become homeless. No, they actually are becoming homeless, that they are residents from these communities. So more information coming soon, but it was quite fascinating how they drilled down on all of that and gave us some information. With that, then, we move on to item number 14, continuation of open forum. So if anybody wants to speak on matters not on the agenda, you can do so at this time of the meeting. And seeing none, then, we will adjourn to our regular meeting on Tuesday, September 4th. That's following Labor Day. And have a safe August, everybody, and enjoy the summer. Thank you.